high up in the air. From boots in Mississippi, needed wheels to get you out of there. He said, now get in, you got it, now get in, you got it. The officer was smiling wide. He said, now get in, you got it, you get in, you got it. You got yourself the ride of your life. I wonder I'll be weary of the rusting of the leaves. They tried to calm me down, but I resisted them with ease. You can dance upon my roots if it helps you to breathe, yeah. But I hope you don't swing on me, the devil's tree, yeah.
How was your ride getting over here?
Short.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because you live pretty close.
Yeah.
Dox yourself right now.
I only got into two near collisions driving down St. Lucie West today.
Oh,
which I feel like is a new record. Yeah. No, it was I was pretty impressed, honestly. There was only like one guy who was going 30 in the left lane, which is normally like everybody.
Yeah, right.
You know, and they, take
new minimum.
Yeah, no, hey, take the dubs when you can get them, right?
Yeah.
Especially driving down St. Lucie West in the middle of the day. That's almost as treacherous as.
It's part of why I moved down to Florida, man, was the new amount of minimums.
Yeah, yeah, I bet.
That you can just live in down here.
Where'd you move here from?
Long Island, New York.
Oh, okay.
Word. Okay, so this is like kindergarten.
Part of the problem, but also glad to be a part of the solution, you know?
No, fair enough. Truth be told, I feel like New Yorkers are like the least of the problems as far as snowbirds here. Most of the problems that I have with snowbirds tend to be from like Rhode Island and Massachusetts, for one. The New Yorkers are almost ubiquitously cool enough to warrant their presence here. But
at this point they've integrated so well because New York and Florida are so like hand in hand, kind of like there's so many New Yorkers here.
Exactly. I feel they're kind of
they are part of the baseline here already.
Yeah.
Since birth, a lot of them too, like myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I came down probably twice a year my entire life. I never spent a Christmas up in New York.
No?
Damn.
So no white Christmases for me, It was growing up, it was always down here and just enjoying the warm weather and going to the beach, and
I really would like to experience at least a single like snowy Christmas because I've never seen snow.
it's definitely cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think I would. I don't know if I would want to live in that type of weather like year round, or in a place that's like cold a lot, like every year. But I definitely want to experience it once.
I agree with you on that notion.
Welcome to Ghost on the Ox. I'm Devin.
I'm Trey.
Oh, sorry.
What? Oh, I thought you were signaling to me to go.
I was.
I was like, I'm sorry.
No, I was, and I hit it.
Anyway,
That's Trey.
Wake up.
Yeah. And with us today is
Eric,
AKA
Riviers Unchosen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Also frontman of a cover band, which is cool.
Correct.
Do you want to say that?
Yes.
Shout that out.
I'm the front man of a cover band. Cover band's called Meltdown, and just another new project that kind of getting going down here.
Yeah. So you guys performed pretty well. I saw was that your first show that you did?
Nope. That was we had done a few shows beforehand.
Okay.
Before that, and
at Hop Life.
Played at that was at Hop Life, and we did a couple of shows at some HOAs and places like that, and we also played up in Daytona
at HOAs. What does that mean?
Like the communities, like these events,
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Neighborhood community events and stuff.
Yeah.
So just sort of getting our feelers out there, and then Daytona was a big one.
Where'd you play in Daytona? I used to live there.
Just right in the center of the racetrack. So we played during the Daytona 400.
For real?
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
How'd you get that gig? That's sick.
Just the band members that we have in the group have been doing music for a long period of time, and they have a lot of good connections, and so
they just rung up a favor like, hey, can we play here?
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah. So
No, that's actually really sick.
Yep.
Well, that's going well.
Our band's going great. It's like I would say namely 90s alternative covers, and that's my wheelhouse, and so
no, that was a perfect time for it. There's a huge 90s revival taking place right now.
There
sort
really
of in
is.
the same vein as like the 80s revival was about a decade ago. You know, and so it's weird how like cyclical that is, but I'm here for it. Being a '90s baby myself, I'm totally down for it.
When's that 2010 revival happening?
Oh man.
Hopefully things have devolved enough to where we don't have to worry about that by then. Hopefully society has collapsed before we have to relive 2013.
Skrillex drops Scary Monsters and Ice Sprites 2.
I'll forget about it.
I'll take it.
I would.
That was a great album.
I would too, honestly.
Yeah.
You also brought some wine to share.
I did.
What did you bring?
California Merlot.
Nice.
Yep. And so yeah, definitely
It's
brought
sweet.
something to share since you guys were willing to share into my world and invite me here, and so I appreciate that so much.
Are you a connoisseur of wine?
I am, yeah. Like we're mainly Merlots, some reds, dry reds,
What's your favorite region?
Yeah, definitely the Napa Valley.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
I don't know that much about wine.
Neither do I. That's why I'm asking him.
I wouldn't even know.
Those are my
my
go-tos. Yeah.
Fair enough. I grew up with Italians, Italian wine.
Okay.
So that's my go-to. I couldn't tell you any of the names of them, but I know them by their label.
Yeah,
their
yeah.
taste. It's like
I know about that Barefoot Moscato. That's about it.
now you're really letting your inner wino white woman out. That one.
Right? No, I enjoy some wine every once in a while, but I wouldn't call myself a connoisseur. I'm not knowledgeable in it. Same with whiskey. I really like whiskey, but
I am
not
way more into whiskey.
Are you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What's your favorite?
Well, I guess
Or a couple of
in the whiskey and Scotch world.
Yeah.
I guess Macallan is pretty much right up there at the top.
Okay.
It's my go-to in any of the special, short runs that they do. They'll do some random ones where they there was one batch where they infused some barley from the Macallan estate into the barrels, and it was just outstanding. It was really good. I like some of the peated, which is cool. It's kind of like a campfire in your mouth.
Okay.
It's kind of really smoky, but it's called peated. It's really delicious stuff. Yeah. Yep.
Maybe you can tell me. I don't remember the name of it, but this streamer I was listening to said that they were drinking this whiskey that is only legally called whiskey because they age it for 1 minute. And it's like notoriously known for tasting really bad.
Wow.
How? Huh?
Yeah, I usually
Because legally it has to be
drink the ones
aged.
that taste really good. So
Yeah. Well, he said that he really liked it, contrary to popular opinion or whatever. But I thought that was kind of fascinating, because there's a lot of weird legalities when it comes to alcohol and categorizing them
sure.
in different types. Like people are like, oh, it's not Scotch unless it's from Scotland.
Understood. Yeah.
that type of thing. Or what's another one? There
are other ones. That's the same.
Some of the best ones
literally.
do come from there, but some of the best ones do come from there. But yeah.
But it's like but I've heard the exact same thing where it's like certain alcohols you can only make within certain regions. Like Merlot is like brewed in the Merlot region of France, I believe. Mm-hmm. Things like that. And so this isn't really Merlot. Mm-hmm. It's not the real thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Yeah,
but it still tastes good. It's
great come out of a red Solo cup.
Oh god, let's have a party. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. My first wine experience ever was, is it considered wine? Sangria.
I don't know. I can't drink that stuff, man.
No?
It's just so sweet.
Yeah, that's like a party wine.
Yeah. Because it's it was filled with fruit.
Yeah, it's basically like wine.
That's what makes it
with a bunch of fruit.
That's what makes it sangria. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I don't know these things.
Yeah.
So that was a regular holiday staple in my household that I only really started taking part in the past couple of years.
Really?
But that
along with the fruitcake, or is fruitcake in your family?
No,
really?
He's the only fruitcake.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ours do for sweets. My grandma just bakes a dozen different kinds of cookies. She just bakes cookies for the entire month leading up to Christmas.
Okay.
And so we have enough cookies for 3 or 4 families.
Way too many cookies.
All she does. Yeah. Yeah. That's the reason. Literally a couple of years ago, I gained 40 pounds over November through January because of my grandma's cookies because I was living with her at the time.
Hey, if you're gonna gain weight, grandma's cookies are the way to do it.
Oh God, yeah. I only just now kind of got back to my original weight. It took me a whole year to get those cookies out of my system, man. And last year I felt so bad because she made them all and they were all there, and I only like had like one a day, like if anything. It was like it was torture, bro.
Must have smelled good though.
Yes, one's like, yeah.
Especially if it's constant. It's just like probably get nose blind to it. You walk outside, you come back in, and you're like, oh my god, gingerbread.
Yeah.
Or whatever
brilliant.
she makes. Shit. Well.
So anyway, yeah, the resurgence of the 90s music is really working out well for me. I mean, I can tell you that at least 2 or 3 people from each of the shows I've played so far, which is not many, have come up to me afterwards saying, thank you for not being a country band in Florida, and, especially being a cover band. They're like, we just see it all the time. It's welcomed here. We love it. But to see a band namely focused on 90s alternative down here, playing 3-hour show, whatever, all the songs that they, remember growing up and listening to and all that was a huge sigh of relief for a lot of them. And I felt like, oh, that's awesome. It's a sort of a random thing that I ended up just getting involved with and giving it a shot, So
let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get into music? Just broad statement. And then what got you to like that lane, that genre?
Yeah.
What attracted you to that?
Well, before I was an active music listener, I found an old acoustic guitar in my basement, and it was my dad's, but my parents were not musical at all. No musical bone in their body. So I have no idea how he acquired the instrument, but there were no strings on it. And so went out and asked one of my buddies that knew something about music to help string it up. And
so were you just, sorry to interject, were you just looking for something to do when you found it?
Yeah, just bored. And but I knew I loved music, so I'm like, well, there's a guitar, there was an old piano at my parents' house as well. Again, they never played it, but it was sort of a decoration, and it was severely out of tune. But I was kind of noodled around on it, and I was a very creative mind, and so anything I could, kind of find and play around with, my curiosity was endless for everything, and so music spoke to me more as being a very emotional being. In fact, I believe I'm more emotion than physical parts.
Okay.
So that's how emotional a person I am. And so, yeah. And so it needed to be sort of, directed in areas that I could benefit from, and so music was one of those things. So,
and were your parents like supportive of that, or were they indifferent, or?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, indifferent to supportive, I guess.
Okay.
Sort of as supportive as you could be, not knowing anything about it.
Right. Okay.
They're like, cool.
He's doing something.
Not bothering us.
Yep. Right. Okay.
So, but yeah, so just kind of started noodling around on the guitar. I think, I think I got the strings from my friend who only had 3 guitar strings. So we strung up this 6-string guitar with 3 strings.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what I had played with for about 2 years.
Interesting.
Nice.
And the guitar was severely warped. It was really old.
That must have lent itself to a very unique sound.
It was a very unique sound.
It's
a very unique sound. And I also didn't take lessons from anything. We didn't have YouTube back in that time period or anything. So just taught myself kind of how to, play around with that. And
any recordings from back then?
Unfortunately. Yeah. My buddy Joe and I started, we got together, and he wanted to learn guitar as well, but he played electric. I never touched an electric in my life, and I sort of just liked the rawness and the earthiness of just having an acoustic and, and so that was kind of my thing. And his thing was always electric and the different amps and stuff like that. So we started writing some stuff together, and it was atrocious. It was really bad. I didn't know how to sing at the time. It was just really the early days. But unfortunately, it wouldn't have been something that you would have listened to and been like, oh, this is a diamond in the rough, it was literally dog shit, you know. It was like, it was really bad. But hey, I guess everybody's got to start somewhere, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, and
good.
Yeah, no. So we just kept kind of noodling around until we got better and better and better. And then next thing you know, Joe and I, he was my childhood friend, you know, and him and I ended up in a band together, and we made it all the way to one of the largest venues on Long Island called the Paramount. And we played there twice, opening up for really big acts.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you remember who?
Gin Blossoms and Rick Springfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know those names personally.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But I'm sure people out there listening do.
Yeah, Gin Blossoms was one of our iconic icons, like just 90s alternative band. And
throughout this podcast, you'll come to learn that I am very musically ignorant, which is why I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
You touched on something briefly that I want to go back to, which is I personally have always, so for listeners, part of how we know Eric here is from the open mics that Trey and I hosted. He was a regular that would show up almost every week, pretty much, for many months straight. And you have of all the people, like, no offense to others, but you have probably one of my favorite singing voices out of many of them. Any of the people that come out. And I'm curious, you said you sounded like shit early on. How did you develop the voice?
Yeah, I think I just kept the same kind of pile of shit and just worked on getting it in tune.
Polish it. Yeah.
So it's sort of like this polished, heap of, dog,
You know what's hilarious is because it's funny that you describe it that way, because the way that I would describe it would be you have a very a smooth rasp kind of tone to it, which, I can kind of hear how that may have developed from something a little bit more raw.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
But
there was a period of time where I really cleaned it up and I didn't have any of that. And I was still writing, just writing every day, and, but I did feel sort of like I was losing myself a little bit. I never really felt like I was home with myself, like home in my own house within my consciousness, of just really feeling like this is me. I was always a part of a band or a group, or I was going out playing cover music, out of bars and stuff for some money and everything. And I never really felt like myself until I moved down to Florida. And when I came down here, I felt like my brain definitely got a little bit messed up with the move.
You're how old again when you moved?
42.
That's how old you are now?
Nope.
Wait.
Moved down here about 2 years ago.
Oh, 2 years ago. Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So 42. And, at that point too, you feel like, you should already be sort of set in who you are and everything. Right. But creatively and musically, maybe you're never done. I never felt like I was done. And, but I felt like that move did something to me. It was something that I was really anticipating, and us moving down to Florida was a really big deal. It was something that we've been trying to do for a long time, and there was some roadblocks that came up, and so we had to kind of put it on pause for a little while. But when we got down here, there was about a good maybe 6 to 8 months where I created nothing, and I didn't even pick up my guitar. It was in the case from when we moved and to wherever it went into the house, and it stayed there. And it was a time where I guess there was just the excitement of the move might have been met with, maybe I thought I was really ready for it, but maybe mentally there was some elements of it that were really hard for me to cope with the change of it all,
Just the general change. Is there anything in particular
I think so.
To?
No, I don't generally love change.
Okay.
I mean, the change that I'm most comfortable with is the creative change that's going on in my mind.
Okay.
But things maybe of that physical nature, of that kind of a uprooting from all your friends and family and everything.
Your environment. And
exactly.
Routines.
Yeah. So I was sort of kind of, I mean, it's all retrospectively, because when I was going through it, I wasn't even thinking about it. But I knew I just didn't feel happy. It was just just kind of going through the motions. A new job. That was the other thing, was it was a brand new type of position.
What do you do?
I'm a nuclear engineer.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah. But I wasn't nuclear up in New York. I was electrical engineer and manufacturing engineer. And And nuclear was such an uphill mountain to climb. And, but the boss that hired me really felt like, all the nuclear engineers that they had on his team were sort of all book learned or right out of college and no hands-on experience. And I had 20 years of hands-on experience, you know? And so he's like, we'll train you up and, you know, whatever. And so, but it was a huge climb, a very big mental, battle to try to feel like, cause I'm somebody that loves to produce. I love to be on the top of my production game. I like to be, you know, the lead. I like to help people along. And so, even up until recently, I've been still feeling like that at this job, you know, and as much as I always knew that your work is your work. And the minute that you walk out of your job, that's when your day starts, you know, like I'm a huge believer of that.
Yeah.
I'd leave it at the doorstep of the job. And then my life starts, you know, as soon as I'm walking out of there for the day. And so that was really what kept me going, you know. And
are you really like a motivated to get a lot done with your time type of person? Like,
I mean that
because like on the opposite end of the spectrum, I know people who at the end of their day, they're tired and unmotivated to do anything, and they have a hard time following through with.
So I hate that feeling.
About. Yeah,
but that's the feeling I was getting with trying to learn such a new angle of engineering.
Okay.
You know, and I was open for it because I never say no. You know, I'll try it's one of my sayings is I'll try anything twice, you know, and I just love,
that's good. At least
so I loved the opportunity and ended up being great. You know, I love my job. But it was at the time there was so many things going on, and that was one of them. That was really this huge change and adjustment. And my brain, I don't think it handled it well because my creativeness just completely went zero. And I've never been at a place like that before. And so, so pretty much this is all coming up to the story of the open mic nights and my new project, which I'm sure we're going to probably talk about at some point.
Yeah.
My creative mind was somewhere in the background. And I think once I realized I needed to unleash my creativity, it was after a few things started kind of fitting into place. We've been down here for a little while. My mind sort of started catching up with, okay, this is reality. There's a little bit more of a consistency of what's going on right now.
Got a little settled into the new norm.
Into the new norm.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden there was one song that just sort of wrote itself in my brain. And I felt like I was just vomiting it out onto the paper, and I was trying to write it really fast. In fact, I was driving and I had to pull over because I was trying to type it up in my notes, you know, in my phone. And I was just like, I have to collect all this stuff. And ended up being the song that motivated me to start hitting up some of these open mic nights. And that's where I met you guys.
That's awesome.
And I will say, you know, thank you for your kind words with, you know, kind of like what you're talking about and the voice and everything, whatever. But I would say that part of my motivation of continuing to do the open mics were because of you guys. And you guys really created such an amazing vibe
thank you.
As a team. And just sitting behind the desk and, you know, whatever you guys were doing, it's really been a positive and an available avenue for me to walk, you know, because of you guys. And I've just been really psyched to have met you guys, and, you know.
That's awesome.
Flattering. I appreciate
that's
that.
a lot of the reason why we did it. Like,
exactly.
Like, I know, like, it fills me with a lot of warmth to hear that because that's literally it, right? Because you know, when we started doing the open mics, it was out of a recognition that there was a need for a space for artists who want to express themselves and, you know, pursue their creativity to do that, like, openly and in front of an audience, because there's like something that isn't talked about enough. I feel like when you can practice at home all you want, but playing in front of an audience, playing to the people that your music is for, being written to, is like a whole different thing. And when you're getting positive feedback and encouragement from that audience,
absolutely,
that does so much to unclog the common, like, musician's mind.
And I feel like an open mic is a unique like scenario, because on one hand it is both a safe space to learn, to progress and express yourself. But because you're in front of an audience, you still have a little bit of that pressure to like that. It's good to have some pressure like on you, like to shape what you're doing. It's that iron sharpens iron type thing, you know, because without that, you'll never go anywhere.
It's a very true statement.
Yeah. The thing that makes it kind of difficult is maintaining the spread of skill levels, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll have it occurred every so often that like we would have most of the people who performed at our open mics, thankfully, were very, very competent and like talented musicians. A lot of whom didn't even recognize it in themselves, which is another reason why we do this, is to let those people know, like, hey, you got the stuff, you got that dog in you. You just got to let it run around a little bit and take it out of the hot car with the windows up once in a while.
Take it to the dog park.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, and having that, like, I don't know, where's I going with that? Basically,
like maintaining the spread.
Yeah, maintaining the spread of skill levels and making sure that the people who maybe weren't as good still felt encouraged to do better, often by us and the people that were doing well.
Absolutely.
Because that happened a lot too, where the people who were doing really well, who were talented musicians, saw something in somebody, you know, else, and they wanted to work with them. Collaborations happen all the time.
Yeah.
Multiple bands formed.
Yeah.
From our open mic alone.
Yeah.
You know, which is like huge. You know, and from varying degrees of skill, but like coming together to form something that's ultimately greater than the sum of their parts.
Tell your local non-douchebag venue owner to hire us.
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, that's also,
I second that.
Yeah, that's also kind of the problem, is that, like, you know, the reason that we're not doing it anymore, the reason why there aren't as many open mics that openly give as much of a shit as Devin and I did, is because a lot of it is dependent on business owners that really only care about their bottom line and bringing in money. When in reality, as Yobob so wisely indicated, we are not the ones who are supposed to bring customers into your fucking business. All
your
right?
kava bar.
Your kava bar. That's your job. We are there, and you are paying us fairly in order to provide entertainment for the patrons. Right. That's what I'm saying. But, you know, you don't need to you know, rest on that for too long. Yeah, that's a whole episode to itself that we're just saving on the back burner.
Tea episode.
Yeah, the tea. Yeah, but I don't have enough wine in my system for that rant right about now. But no, and it's not just it's a lot. It's most of the people that we
that out. I'm stealing that in.
No, that please do. It's a lot of pretty much everywhere that we've hosted the open mic at. There's been some bullshit with either what they want from us or how little that they're paying us, or, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And it's just, which is to say that it's like, it's none of these individual people's fault, because at the end of the day, these people wouldn't have as much sway as they do to just like treat us however they want if the culture around here was different or better, or at the very least more cohesive.
Yeah,
you know, like it was us doing what we did was an active effort to initiate that kind of a culture in this area.
Absolutely.
You know, and there definitely are still pockets of that, and there are people putting in the good work and still providing those spaces to varying degrees of quality, you know, around here. Like, the effort is still being made, but there's not enough like cohesiveness between these artists that see the vision and want to like make stuff happen, and the general populace that's so wrapped up in the rat race of modern American living, especially here in South Florida. You know, it's like people are they got too much shit going on to, you know, they got too much stuff to worry about to be worrying about the state of music, their local music scene.
Yeah,
you know, and so it's
a business, but they have to understand the benefits of what you guys were bringing to the table. And I really feel like I'm hopeful to see when you guys will kind of pop into that again, you know. But in the meantime, we got this podcast going on, you know, which I think is awesome. And I'm so excited.
Nothing publicly we could talk about, but there are things being developed.
Great.
Bubbling up in the eventually. Marinating.
That's very exciting to me.
Yeah, we're still putting in the work in the background.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We got some things.
That's great.
Right now with my current job, like, I have to work nights, unfortunately, like 6 days a week. And
and
so, but
nights, like what hours?
Like 8 to 4. But
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that said, it's a fun job that I like a lot and is paying me a lot better than my previous work. And so I'm basically in get my money up, not my funny up mode, and then by the time I'm at a position there where I do have more free time and I'm making enough money to live comfortably and reinvest into things, that's when like the real work's going to be getting started, or at least on my end, and I know Devin has aspirations to be, with this, that he's been following up on, has been gaining a lot of steam and a lot of traction, which is why we're doing this. Because it is like a perfect thing that fits into both of our schedules, and that still allows us to be a positive cultural force. It's different. It's a different lane, a different avenue, but it's still supporting and unifying this culture that we're in. Exactly. And ultimately that's what it's all about. It's like we're just out here for the culture, trying to make something happen when nobody else seems to not necessarily want to or be putting in the effort, but it's just like the more people putting in that effort, the closer we get to what I was describing earlier about like there being a cohesive and coherent, like true culture, like locally, where people recognize, like just laymen recognize the musicians who are really putting in the work. My whole gripe with the whole like venue owners and stuff not really like supporting or not doing maybe as much as they could to support that culture is the fact that I feel like so many of them, I feel like a percentage of it is probably just trying to run their business, like money, I get it, like just purely logistically, but I feel like there are a lot of them are too short-sighted to see the benefit of being part of and helping to contribute to that broader culture. They just don't see the vision. Well, I mean, that's because they're insurance salesmen, not artists. Not speaking of anybody in particular. But fundamentally, like, again, a little bit of shade, but not really. Like it is like there is something to be said about that. Like most of the people who own these businesses are business owners. Right. And so it's like to run a business, you have to have a business mind. It's like the allegory. It's like the allegory of the scorpion and the frog. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you let the scorpion on your back and, it says it won't sting you, but ultimately it's in his nature, and everybody involved knew better. And we all knew where this is going, and like, I didn't necessarily at first until I had like a little more experience with not just, anybody in particular, but generally business owners like around and seeing how they treat musicians, which is why when everything went down, I was just like, it was inevitable. You know what I mean? And all this stuff kind of is inevitable, but that's, it's just a matter of, it's not how hard you fall, but how quickly you get back up, I think is how that adage goes. You know what I mean? So as long as, and that's why, again, this podcast is like a good avenue for that, that fits well into my work schedule and his schedule, and still allows us to make a positive influence, most importantly, independently. Because that's like the big thing. Major key, independence. Not that we should have to be saying that part out loud, being warm-blooded Americans, but apparently it needs to be reiterated that independence is important. And it's like, but that's why like I am working as hard as I am and trying to just like stack as much money as I can, because ultimately it's like nobody wants to be dependent on any of these other businesses, and ultimately you can't blame these businesses for being the way that they are. It sucks to suck, but ultimately if you want to suck, then that's your prerogative as a free American, to suck. And so ultimately it's up to us to be the change that we want to see in the world, which is corny to say, but it's just true. No, that's why I said it like it's that, cliche, but it's just facts. Yeah. It's just major key. You actually have to be the thing you want to see. Mm-hmm. I'm vibing with that. It's just real. 100%. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I guess question, how did you discover our open mic in particular? Did you try a few different ones? You landed with ours? Yeah. Yep. I don't know if we're dropping names or anything like that, whatever. You can. Places. So, I don't care. I had looked up open mic nights, and the one that I saw first was Harmony Lounge, which is in Fort Pierce by the docks. Shout out to Harmony Lounge. Harmony Lounge. They're doing pretty well now. Better than they were the last time I was there. What a great, and I will say that New York's open mic scene is pretty crappy. It's been crappy for many years. And what makes it crappy? I don't know.
I don't know. The
like
culture.
what qualities does it have?
People are just not. I'm gonna blanket statement a lot of people in this next comment, but I will say that New Yorkers in general are out to when they go out, they're all about the social groups that they come with and that they vibe with and hang out with, and not too interested in, say, hey, what's this person doing, or what's that person playing over there, or
so they're very like insular.
Yeah, not in a bad way. It's sort of just the culture.
Okay,
is just very high moving and not relaxing, and so even for open mic nights, pretty much you just hear everybody's just talking, and wow, what a shift to Harmony Music Lounge. Not just for the fact that I'm finding people down here in Florida are a lot more laid back, which I love. And, but Harmony Music Lounge, the way that they had set up sort of their environment for open mic nights was that they had all these chairs and couches. It was dimly lit. Chairs and couches were all sort of circled around, generally facing the area where people will play, and again, it's not a stage or anything like that. It's just this area, this corner.
Yeah.
Are you still going to the open mics there?
Occasionally I still go.
Is Charles still hosting those?
No,
not
from when I was there last.
Fair enough. Shout out Charles Kaloya. Anyway, he's a real one.
Yeah,
doing it for the culture.
Real one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But either way,
but I haven't been there for a minute, so I can't.
Fair enough.
Answer that 100%, but not from when I was going. But I will say that that vibe was really good. I mean, people came and they listened to every word that you sang, and as somebody who is like myself and many others that attend these open mic nights, they put a lot of work and effort, sweat and tears sometimes into their lyrics and their instrument that they're playing.
It means something. It's not
absolutely.
It's not just
and not that as musicians and creative minds, we're not going for the recognition, at least not generally not, I just kind of go for myself, and to kind of like what you guys were talking about earlier, sort of work on being in front of people, working on perfecting your craft, and being in a place where they could be some positive criticism or, whatever, or encouragement. That place was like, you could hear a pin drop anytime anybody was playing anything up there. And I thought that was really cool. Like, I was just like, wow, this is, I did not have this up in New York, and I didn't even know this existed. People actually caring, you know? And I just thought that was awesome. And so Harmony Music Lounge. And then I, found out with, two of my other buddies that play open mic nights fairly regularly, Jimmy and Matt. We figured out, all right, let's see what other places are around that'll, that have open mics going on. And one of them ended up being the place that you guys were hosting. And it wasn't necessarily the place, it was the people, the vibe, and what you guys sort of orchestrated together, which really kept me, attached. And I believe it was originally Havakava before it moved on, but yeah. But I had only moved because it's where you guys ended up moving, And so I'm like, I like that vibe, that's where I want to go, So
yeah,
I'll take that as a compliment. I appreciate
it as a compliment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I very much appreciate that for sure. And I will say that, like, for whatever grievances,
find a new place quickly.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Well, we not to cut you off because I know you're going to say something, but we've gotten a lot of feedback from friends and other. Well, yeah, I would call all of them friends, pretty much. Other musicians and everything that were regulars that really want us to come back, and we're trying.
Yep.
Well, at least I'm trying. I know you're busy, but we're trying.
The price has been set. Our price.
Yeah, and it's well, okay. There's something I'll get into off air with you about that, but something you can probably help us with, potentially. But anyways, what were you gonna say?
I was just saying, like, regardless of whatever grievances that we have with it was set up in such a way that making that vibe was very easy, because it is very much like it's big and it's a very much a blank slate aesthetically, which minimal shade in that statement. But it left a lot of room for flexibility in how we curated the vibe and how we set things up, you know. And
the vibe was white mom living room, remember?
Well, yes.
That's what I told him.
Basically, yeah. You know,
which I like.
Yeah.
Like when you're a kid, you're growing up, you go to your friend. Everybody has that friend whose mom decorates in that type of way.
Yeah.
And you go to their house and they're usually kind of the chill mom sometimes. So it's like, it's a kind of a cozy,
that's why everybody goes,
sort of nostalgic vibe to it.
Yeah. But you know, it's the nicest way of saying it's a very low effort aesthetically. But the you know, that gave us a lot of flexibility to kind of make the aesthetic, you know, what we wanted it to be. And it worked out very well versus somewhere like which
very much had an established vibe,
which they were cool with us, like business wise. They had us there, and you know, we ended up leaving just because, like, you know, certain other conflicts that didn't really have to do so much with the owners and us or anything like that. It was just a bunch of like things lined up to where we just didn't do it anymore. But the vibe there was definitely discernibly different. Mm-hmm. It felt more like, rather than plugging in, we were just kind of like placed on top of something.
Yeah.
Interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Like if we felt like a disconnected entity in this business, you know, versus being a part of the grander culture of that business.
Interesting.
You know, and that maybe have something to do with the fact that I actually, so I was a lot more familiar with that space and like that culture and all that.
Faces.
Yeah, a lot of the faces there, and which probably lent a lot to that sense of like familiarity and like cohesion with the community there. But you know, that's a lot of what kept us from finding a new place immediately after the, because I hadn't even had my new job at that point. Was the fact that if you kind of have to be careful about the venues that you choose beyond just the people who own it. But like, if there isn't, like, we learned this doing the open mic at Rax for a few weeks. I don't know if you even knew about that little mini arc.
No.
But we had tried to do a second open mic, because the idea was that we would have like a circuit of them. We would do like 2 or 3 a week. Okay. You know, that we would host like various spots in order to grow that crowd, which would follow us around. It was a lot like the Flow Nights. I don't know if you're familiar with the, like the fire spinning and like nights.
Sure. Yep.
They have, that's kind of the model that they utilize, where they
4 places to go to now.
Yeah.
And they have a whole tour basically.
Yeah, they've got a monthly circuit that they run, essentially a weekly / monthly circuit.
Yeah, weekly.
And so like that's kind of what we were trying to do with the open mics, where we would build up our audience, you know, by, you know, hosting our mic at these other spots, you know, and kind of bringing those people with us, and thus bringing more people into the business.
Absolutely.
You know, but the owners, for whatever reason, despite the Flow Nights being their second biggest night at the time, didn't believe in that model when we tried to appropriate it. And that's why we're not at anymore. But to get on to Rax, the Rax was an interesting case, because they have like a whole side area with a stage and sound and like seating, and it's like a whole like little mini venue off to the side of the pool hall. Yeah, it's really cool. I think it's called the Ace of Spades or something like that, or Ace of Clubs.
No,
I think
I forget.
Something like that.
Something like that sounds right.
Some card pun.
It's basically like a multi-purpose room with a stage and lighting and sound and everything. And this looks awesome, sounds great. They use it for rental for like parties and private events and things.
Like rehearsals and things.
And we wanted to try to use it for our open mic, for an open mic. And I'm sure you're going somewhere with that, but basically it just didn't work out, because it was very separate from the rest of what was going on in the play. Because like, you know, like Chill Room and Hava Kava, it's just one big open space.
Correct.
But Rax is literally, you have to go. If you don't know that room is there, you're not even going to notice what's going on, because it's literally separated by a wall, and you have to go through a door to even know that room is there.
Yeah, it goes into what I was saying about how it's like, it's kind of our job to. It kind of like drilled that further into me of how it's our job to provide entertainment for a crowd that the business it's on the business to bring there in the first place. Like we are just providing quality, like entertainment and production and a quality stage that will attract more people to this space and interact with the crowd. And a lot of the people who came to our open mic ended up becoming regulars, at these different spots.
Yep.
And that's kind of exactly. And that's kind of the synchronicity that is, meant to take place, the symbiotic relationship. But it didn't work out with Rax because we were so disconnected and not a lot of people, it was on a Thursday too, which probably didn't help. It's a weird night for some people, and it's
the open mic night. Really, I mean, there's very few, right? That'll kind of, because they're usually doing larger bands or more well-known bands to bring in more people, right, on Fridays or the weekends. But have you? I don't know. I mean, that's New York. I don't know down here. Well, if it's different. Are there openings for open mic night opportunities on Fridays and weekends, or?
Typically, the issue is competition.
Places that are like desirable to do that kind of thing are either like too small to really support it or too big and they already have their own stuff established.
Gotcha.
Going on.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Entertainment.
Yeah, entertainment.
Yeah, yeah.
So like we kind of have to fit. We have to. That's why he's saying we have to be careful and like find the right spots.
Yeah.
Which is again speaking like we are like I've stated it before, but just to reiterate, like Devin and I, with everything we're saying about the open mic, we're not the only ones out here putting in the work trying to make this shit happen.
Yeah, there's others.
It is a grander cultural issue that a lot of it has to do with. Not necessarily gatekeeping, because I am personally a huge proponent of gatekeeping. I think that it's very valuable in the right context and used properly, but it's more so of just like institutionalized, like established, standards of how certain things are done at certain levels, and people that are already friends with somebody else and doing business with them and comfortable doing business with them for whatever price. A lot of undercutting that happens in certain situations. And it's there's a lot going into it, and so you kind of it's gotta be the right place at the right time, for that like spark, that like real special thing to really be there.
Sometimes it's like, oh, you're paying him $100 to do that thing. I'll do it for free just so he doesn't get to do it.
Exactly.
Wow.
Like stuff like that really happens.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
And I will say not so much like. The DJing scene in particular is really bad about that. But I feel like people are starting to like really pick up on that, and I'm starting to see a lot more barking on social media about that issue specifically. So we're, hopefully, that's something that will change over time. It's something that I've always tried to do whenever I would host like big electronic shows. I've never produced or put on a show where my performers were paid like less than $60 at least for like a 2-hour gig.
Sure.
You know what I mean? $30 an hour is more than most of them are going to get paid for their jobs like for years if they aren't already, and so like that, and that's like what I could afford to pay out of pocket, at the time. But but not like these business owners couldn't do the same. But I'm the one who actually gave a shit, and a lot of these other people, they're either not in positions where they can afford to pay out of pocket for that, or they just don't want to. And so it's like the people that do have that talent, they're kind of put in a position where it's like, there's no leverage. A lot of the people out here that, are talented enough to like swing dick, so to speak, and like demand like higher prices for what they provide and like kind of leave and let their absence speak for itself, aren't doing that. For one reason or another. And, I'm not this is like zero shade. Everybody has their reasons for doing stuff. I know it's not all malicious. It's not.
I also want to clarify one little thing, like just for the audience, that it's not all about money, but the money is important because doing these things, performing or hosting, providing all this stuff is still a service.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's still a service, and it's like we're not like in it to get rich necessarily, but bills still have to get paid, and we're still spending time doing a thing.
Absolutely,
Yeah. So like, whether
I think it's important that we're talking about this right now.
It shouldn't have to be such a chore and such an ordeal to fight for payment that at least allows us to break even for travel and production.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
and this same kind of thing that we're talking about right now applies to the musicians as well, you know, and it's just like for putting in a service where you guys are hosting. It's not just like the time of the event, you know. There's like this. There's the thought of it all. What's it going to look like? There's creative juices flowing behind it all, right?
Absolutely.
This is a movement, you know, and it's a movement. It's a movement that is going to benefit others.
Exactly.
And I'm a huge fan of that. And I appreciate just sitting here and listening and opening my mind up to some of the stuff that you guys go through as open mic night hosts, you know, and there's a great team, by the way, that does that. For us to know as the musicians, you know, how much is being put into it and the kind of things that go into it, you know, not to take it for granted, you know?
Absolutely. And again, like I said, you know, we're not the only ones. Like there are definitely a lot of people out there like Charles, like Mike Foro, you know, et cetera, you know, that are putting in the work to like still.
Does Dave, I don't know his last name, does David from the jazz band, David Caleb, doesn't David host an open mic also?
I think that, yeah, he did before. I think that one was at like the Civic Center, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if he still does that, but he did do that. You know, he's out here. You know, again, he's another big mover and shaker in the culture. He got this like roving jazz band together.
Really?
Now that's like hitting up all the open mics and playing at a bunch of spots.
I think you've seen him before.
Yeah.
If it's the group that played at the Chill Room a few times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. They were incredible.
With
I cannot believe that was just like a random collab that turned into something magnificent.
Sax, bass,
trumpet,
piano, keyboard,
guitar and vocals.
They also
and drums.
I felt like I was watching a super group,
right?
Yeah, of just
he also has that
unnamed people, you know, that because I didn't know them.
Yeah,
but see, and that's something that like I think that's something that
many talents.
That's something that like worked very positively for us, but I think ultimately worked against us is because, like I said, the quality of artists that would come through and would perform, and the quality that would be brought out of people that may not have wanted to perform at that level previously or been as inspired or encouraged to, I think was in large part taken for granted by pretty much everywhere that we've hosted the open mic at, because it's always been like that.
Sure.
You know, and like that, and that I can like kind of understand, you know, because it's like, oh, well, this is already here. It's not these people, it's all this talent, all these musicians, you know, and so get rid of the middleman, just do it myself. Where did all my talent go? You know, what happened? You know, but it's like, and like that's a fair mistake to make, you know, like again, doesn't have to be malicious. But like again, speaking towards an air of independence, I can understand the want to like cut the middleman. Yeah, you know, but in that you don't want to, as another aged adage, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, you know, and end up like sacrificing the vibe, you know, all that je ne sais quoi and that trust that you have in somebody to curate an environment that kind of thing thrives in order to, you know, save a few bucks, you know, because like but that goes into, you know, it's like again, it's like there aren't artists that own these places that like really have like the vision. I kind of correct myself because that's not so much true now. KMK, Kava Me Crazy, they have like an open jam night that's pretty good.
Yep, been there a few times already.
Yeah, and they're like Joe and Robin, the people that own that spot, are they've been regulars at Kava bars all up and down. They know the bullshit just as well as anyone else, you know, and they are out here trying to be a positive force in that culture as business owners. Yeah. And so, you know I've sung their praises on here before, but I will continue to, because they're real ones and we appreciate you. Sponsor us. I'm just kidding. But not really.
Do it though.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Yeah, please. We will.
You should talk to them.
Yeah, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, that would probably be a good idea. But in any event, you know, so again, it's like there are, you know, there are other people that care, and those people are due their flowers. Absolutely. You know, and we're just doing what we can, as well as just like everybody else that's doing what they can, you know, and I feel like the more people that see that, the more people that the more people that'll be inspired to do that.
Absolutely.
And then that'll just kind of like snowball, into something grander, which I feel has already happened even after we've stopped doing our open mic. I still see a lot of the people that picked up at our open mic, like you and like, a few other people, who
still looking for where to go.
Exactly. And still have places to go.
Still have places to go.
Yeah.
Sad to not be joined at the moment, for those events, but,
I really miss it because it was, for me, it was my dedicated one night a week to socialize and like get out and
me
like
too.
And meet up with everybody in
I guess I would say the same thing,
in our community.
Yeah.
Because like otherwise it was very unifying, because otherwise if I went out any other night of the week, I'm kind of picking and choosing like what group I want to be hanging out with, because people tend to, self-segregate into their groups and their friend groups and whatever at different places, do different events, whatever. But at open mic, it just felt like everybody was, for the most part, everybody was just like there.
Absolutely.
And I got to see everybody.
Yeah, present and intentional.
And hear from everybody.
Yeah. Yep. I made friends with some people that I would never have, for instance, walked past on the road or saw someplace, gas station or whatever, and said,
speaking of that, it's like,
hey, what's going on? I mean, people polar opposite than myself.
And speaking of that, it's very
that is a beautiful thing.
It was like a networking hub.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of art in general, is that it can draw those bridges between two diametrically opposed individuals in all other ways that just have a mutual appreciation for this common craft that they pursue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or how their respective craft can like complement each other.
And how about this? There are genres of music that some of these performers and artists are playing, when they do their open mics and stuff, and that because of the connection that I made personally with them, as an example, I'm listening to styles of music that I never would ever give the time of day.
Oh, wow.
And so
can you give an example?
Yeah, almond pistachio.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Almond pistachio. Shout out.
Big shout out. Hell yeah.
I mean, like, never, ever once have I listened to that genre of music, but
what would you classify his genre as?
Pop.
Yeah, but it has a almondy flavor to it.
It's kind of
there's an almondy flavor.
It's very much it's its own thing. Yeah. Which is part of what makes it so special.
It leaves a taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it does.
Sort of like wine does, right? Not a bad taste. But an interesting and unique taste.
It's that nut flavor.
It's the nut. It is the nut flavor. And I'm telling you, and it takes days until you realize I can't wait to see him again and get some more of that. But that's an example of what I'm talking about. It's just it's just one of those things where I'm like, wow, because I know him personally, right? And he is a beautiful person inside and out. And that's the same with a lot of these musicians that I never would have come across if it weren't for these open mic nights, hangouts, it's kind of social events. And it's a time that I get to go out, and kind of have that once a week kind of thing where I'm like, all right, if I have enough social juice to try to pull off, it's going to be one night for like 3 hours. And that's where it would happen. You know what I mean? And, so it's great, it's great. And
now if I can pivot back to you a little bit more, I know I asked you,
you don't have to, but I appreciate it.
I mean, you're the guest. It'd be really awkward if I just invite you on the show and we just talk about other shit the whole time.
I love it though. Aren't we so cool?
I love it though. Yeah, you are so cool.
You're welcome for the platform we gave you anyway.
What's so I asked you before when I went to that show at Hop Life, I had asked you, I don't remember why we were talking about it, but I asked you like how many of your own songs you've written, and you said you had a pretty solid body of work, like at least an album's worth, like 12.
Correct.
So
yeah, most of, by the way, was written since I moved down to Florida.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
How long did it take to accumulate that?
It was so quick, work? And I'll tell you, it was about 6 to 8 months of retrospectively considering that I was probably just not in my normal mental state from moving down here. And it was just a rush of outflow of writing.
You just unclogged.
It was, yeah, absolutely. It was just like a plunger to the brain, you know, and just all the stuff came out really quickly. And right out of the gate, I had 4 songs that I was playing at the first open mic night of that first week that I decided I'm going to do something with this music that I have now. And not only that, but I remember before we were talking about how I was still trying to find my voice, even though I've been a musician for forever. And it wasn't until that sort of outpouring of writing, and I did not have the band that I was in, for instance, up in New York. And that was an interesting group because we had all 4 members of the band were into completely different styles of music. And so we had a drummer who was only into reggae, and then bass player who was namely into just classic rock. And my electric guitar player was mostly into like metal. And I was a singer-songwriter with an acoustic guitar. And so all those elements together, it was really beautiful, the stuff that we wrote.
That's awesome. I love that.
Nobody had the same angle, and it was amazing. And it was only great because we didn't have 2 people that were into sort of the same thing. It only worked because we were all completely looking at different directions, bringing in whatever they were good at.
Bringing in influence from multiple angles.
And I would come as a singer-songwriter, which I don't understand why that's a genre, because that makes no sense to me, right? Because you can literally sing-songwrite anything.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call it a genre, but it's a descriptor.
It's a descriptor.
Yeah.
I like that word.
Like I would call you a singer-songwriter, but I wouldn't label that as your genre.
Yeah.
I feel like some people, like they chase after specific sounds, may chase after the experience of hearing somebody kind of speak to them directly as one person to another through the avenue of music. And what I feel like a lot of that would be like considered folk music previously, but since folk music has like been around for a long time and kind of like accrued its own thing, like its own series of motifs and themes and things like that, as music has evolved, you know, and more individual musicians who communicate and express themselves through music in that way, you know, have like brought in a lot of different elements, different sounds, you know, like
folk itself is like a very malleable term, because it's like the way I think about it is folk is just the sound of whatever culture it's in at that time.
That is correct.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like the region.
I was going to bring folk
region
up actually, which is just great that we're talking about it. Yeah.
And I'm sorry I cut you off.
Yeah.
Well, just to me, it's like the Sun Kill Moon and James Blake are both singer-songwriters, but their music could not be any more different.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of, but they
which worked in this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so were you finished with your
yeah.
So that's kind of what happened. I would write these songs on acoustic guitar, sort of genre-less, I guess. I mean, like for the most part, I was a child of the 90s, so that's where I got most of my sort of influences from, right? Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, you know, sort of that, you know, Days of the New, you know, that sort of kind of where there was always acoustic instruments involved, right? Well, not Nirvana so much besides their acoustic songs, but the Pumpkins incorporated, like every other song had acoustic guitar, and it was just amazing how they did one heavy song and then one light song and then one heavy song, and their album was just an emotional journey, you know, and that was really something I had grabbed onto, and so the stuff that I come up with, I would assume would be sort of labeled maybe like acoustic rock or acoustic alternative with some folk elements to it, because I'm always including a little bit of that swing, you know, to it. Like it's not just a straight, you know, 4/4 or whatever. It's got to have some sort of like a feeling.
I believe that's what
they
referred to back in the day as rock and roll.
Yeah, probably right.
Yeah, that rock.
The origins of where it came from had swing, you know, and it's sort of they just spent a whole bunch of years and decades and generations trying to like unhinging that from it. But that's sort of always kind of been part of what I've played, and so I would just bring that to the band. I would bring that to the group and be like, all right, here's my song. And everybody just kind of did their own thing with it. And they're like, all right, let's see what we got. And it was insane.
And so is that the same band that you're riding with currently?
No, that was the band that I had left up in New York when I started having kids. It was just sort of like, all right, that project was put to rest. Our last 2 shows were at the Paramount. It was one of those things where locally it was really hard to break out of the local circuit.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I can say is a huge contrast from New York to Florida for me is I'm jumping all over, but there's a cohesive ending to this, which is getting back to the whole point that we're making here.
Podcast will be all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love it.
This isn't a CNN 5-second on the air. Like, what do you think about Israel? Oh, now you got to commercial. No, we got time.
Thank God. But yeah, so just like we played those last 2 shows, and it was sort of like pulling teeth, trying to get friends and family to come to your shows and support you up in New York. And I'm assuming it's just culturally, location, and socially how you're kind of brought up in those regions, Mm-hmm. And I'm namely familiar with New York, right? And the tri-state area, but coming down here, it was just way different. It's way different, and I have people just like, they just cannot wait till I play again and till my band plays again, and to go out and I have the solo project. I have that for the cover band Meltdown, that I'm in, and I just love that culture. It's not about us, but it's about people just wanting to go out and enjoy talent, and a lot less people down here have a busy schedule in the evenings. Whereas up in New York, sometimes, it's like I had 3 jobs up in New York just to make it. Yeah. And
I feel like that's slowly becoming more of an issue here, though. Because again, that's kind of the position that I'm in. Like, I got 4 hours out of the day to do jack shit, and those hours are 4 to 8 in the fucking morning.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's like, and I know that that's a common.
Well,
thing.
Everybody has seasons that they have to, get through whatever. And I don't know if, for me, I came down here to Florida to not work any more than 1 job, and
good place to be for nuclear engineering.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing. Right. So, but it worked out that way. But yeah, I hope not. I hope that people aren't moving in that direction in this region, because I'm really feeling the vibe down here is like, this is a place where people just are looking for stuff to do.
I think,
and I love that. I've just not.
I think Florida,
I'm not familiar with that.
Definitely has that always looking for something to do vibe.
Yeah,
because it being like geographically where it is on the planet, it gives you a lot of options. Of stuff
that's true
to do.
Yeah,
in terms of outdoor
New
things,
York,
like
we're just playing footsie under the table while you're talking about that. Don't worry about it.
Man, I'm not part of it.
Yeah,
you're a safe distance away.
Yeah, but like we got the beach and the whole vibe and aesthetic that comes with that. Then there's like the fucking swamplands and there's the whole vibe and aesthetic that comes with that. Then there's like the little pockets of New York kind of like influenced places that are more busy and stuff. Because I think that like you said, I think it is also growing to be a bit more busy, but in general, we still have that more laid back culture,
and that namely might be because of the influx of people and the amount of people that are moving into the area, because
and don't forget,
more people is going to create more movement anyway.
And then I almost forgot the whole fact that Florida is a tourist hub for Disney and all these other parks and stuff. Which there's always stuff to do in Florida.
Yeah.
But I also feel like that has a lot to do with why it's been such an uphill battle to like establish a culture here, is because the turnover rate of the population is like extremely fast.
Correct.
Like on a seasonal basis with like the whole snowbird migration thing, but then also just people getting priced out of the state and moving into the state past like 7 years in particular. It's like there's a lot of like reshuffling and reinstitutionalization that's happening.
True.
Which is a good thing, because that leaves a lot of, if people are smart about it and play their cards right, there's a lot of potential in that chaos to form something great. But it's just a matter of like making people aware enough and collectivized enough to like, and aware, I already said aware enough, but you know what I mean, to like kind of make that or make them aware that that is something that they want, because it may be something again that they take for granted.
Absolutely.
You know, right? Or that they don't recognize takes like a concerted effort from people who care to maintain it.
Right on. Yeah.
Or establish it in the first place.
But I like that about Florida. I feel like what you said is true. Like, and you can go to different places and be in a completely different type of vibe at those places. Up in New York, there was a million places you can go to, but everybody's just like, let's go here, let's go there, let's go there, let's go to any of these 100 different places, but let's just be the same.
Because they're interchangeable in a sense.
Yeah. But they're the same anywhere you go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, where it is like town by town, the cultures of the different towns are very, very different.
Right.
Like, absolutely.
So, and you can tell that as playing music in different places, you know, and how they respond to it. But yeah, been really enjoying that down here. That's just such a great outlet, you know.
I'm happy to hear somebody
Great outlet.
enjoying moving here.
Yeah,
For real.
For a change of pace.
Again, it's been a dream for a very long time. And
why is that? Like
well, again,
before you actually did move, what was the reason behind it? Why was it planned?
My family always came down here like twice a year, you know, every year growing up. Remember? So it was just sort of like this place was that getaway, and I knew there was something special to it because I've always loved the beach. But I also knew.
To clarify, where you guys visited, was it here locally or Florida generally?
No, it was namely Orlando.
Okay.
Namely Orlando. Camping though.
Okay. Cool.
So like Fort Wilderness.
Nice.
Okay.
Campground area.
That's cool.
Or outdoor resorts, which is, not outdoor resorts was not associated with Disney. But again, just being in the Orlando area, just coming down to camp. But my family were huge campers. So we were just always looking for a place to camp.
I'm really trying.
Should we name this fly?
Right.
Because
he's
definitely part of the podcast. He's
you got to add him to your drawing.
Yeah, you're right.
Name idea.
Jimbert.
Phoebe.
Okay. I like that actually.
Ulysses.
I was thinking Marcus.
Marcus.
Yeah.
These are all great names.
Yeah.
I liked Phoebe.
Yeah. Phoebe.
Also, yeah, Phoebe. Phoebe's a good one.
Let's go with that. Phoebe.
Yeah. Phoebe the fly.
It's he's she now.
What were we talking about 5 seconds ago? I am completely naming
to
the
Florida and why.
Oh yeah.
Shout out Phoebe over there.
Yeah, wino in the room.
So I will say this: when I got married 10 years ago, we had already been talking about moving down to Florida. I love the beach. Mm-hmm. My wife loves the beach, and where we lived on Long Island was like we were 25 minutes from any of like 50 beaches, surrounded by beaches. Can only enjoy them 1.5 to 2 months out of the whole year.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of weird, It's sort of like having your favorite plate of food standing in front of you, but like pane of glass,
right?
And you can't get it. You ain't gonna get it. You can't get it.
Yeah, that's always something that I've thought was weird, like, because I've lived in Florida my entire life, and I could probably count on like 3 sets of hands the amount of times I've actually been to the beach.
Yeah, well, that is something that I'm hearing about. A lot of people that grew up here. That is something that. Did you grow up here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you take it for granted.
Yeah.
It's sort of like,
absolutely,
the beach, the beach, whatever, right? Yeah.
For me, I just never liked the beach.
I always had the beach too.
I love the beach. It's just it's always like it's an all day affair. It's the setting up to get there, making sure you got all the stuff, the sunscreen, getting sand all up and everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
like whatever. The
water, it's coarse and it gets everywhere.
Bro, I hate sand so much.
Yeah.
My favorite beach, beach type of beach trip is like taking a walk at night when it's like cool.
Yeah.
With a blunt or something to smoke or something. Like
I got cigars. I'm always with the cigars.
At work too.
Yeah.
Like that's what I like.
I never go to the beach without a cigar.
When I lived in Daytona, that's what I would do because I lived pretty close to the beach also.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I moved around a few times within the area. For a little while, I lived in a condo on the beach. For a little while, I lived.
Well, very nice.
Okay, Borat.
I like this.
Was Borat 2 any good?
Yes.
Was it?
Anything he was in was phenomenal.
That's valid.
I never saw the sequel.
It was great. Yeah.
But yeah, while I lived there, I didn't go to the beach often, but it was at night when I really enjoyed it, especially going on like the pier. That was fun, but it was also a little sketchy because like a lot of like sketchy individuals and homeless people would congregate at night on the beach and sleep under piers.
And why is that?
Why?
Yeah.
Probably because they're not getting bothered by people. I don't know.
It's the vibe, man. There's something about the beach. And when you have nothing else,
sense. Yeah,
and you have availability and you're close enough to it, you're either drawn to it or you figure out how you're going to, stay around those areas, and there's something about the beach, man. I'm telling you. And I think that it's universal. And I'm not going to say it's for you necessarily, or like people that don't like getting stand up in every crevice and every hole, of
I pass on going to the beach.
You would? Okay. Yeah.
I don't.
But I'm telling you, there's something therapeutic about those waves.
Dude, yes.
The sound, there is a vibration.
The salt in the air.
I think for me, it's the heat.
We are
like,
connected.
I don't like going
we are
out
connected at the beach. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that.
You know what's cool about that though? Is because I lived out in Colorado for a couple of years, right? And I felt that exact same like sense, that like vibe, that connectedness with nature and like that therapeutic, like there's something in the air whenever I went into the mountains.
Okay, yeah.
It's like like the equal yet opposite kind of like natural force where you're just kind of in awe at the splendor of this like incomprehensibly large entity that is acting upon you.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I will say it's a naturally, I would say naturally, humans do a much better job of understanding who they are when they are in a humbling place where it's not about them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you were talking about. It's being out in nature somewhere where you are you're one of the smallest.
You're a speck
of a mushroom on a rotting log in the middle of this huge, outdoor area, and being by the ocean, and you're just a grain of sand, and there is something about that, and I believe that I really do believe that the self is so much more in tune to itself. I just love feeling so small, and I love the humbling element of that,
Absolutely.
And that's what I specifically love about the beach. But I think you're right that everybody can find their own place to go if they're looking, if they're conscious, and if they're aware that there is places that you can go where you can vibe, whereas you feel yourself kind of shrinking down. And I love that. And I love being like that with people as well, And so sometimes you can be in the middle of the city, somewhere.
I was actually just going to draw this tie in because it's like everything you're describing could, but distinctly I feel like doesn't apply to a place like New York, where you are, for all intents and purposes, a meaningless speck in an ocean of just everything going on around you, completely independent of you and your presence there.
That's right.
And so it's kind of like, but it's almost like in an opposite direction where you feel like drained, but for the same kind of reasons that you would feel like emboldened by. Maybe
it's because of the man-made nature of it all.
Well, yeah,
compared to. Because looking out at a massive city skyline or just being in the middle of it, it's also huge and grand and everything, but it's not. It's all man-made and it all serves a purpose.
You can still find,
rather than just being in nature and getting to see what
you can still find the noise in it, though.
Yeah,
it's sort of it's visual noise, but you can still find the noise of it all. And it's a lot, and with all the people, and when it's just so many people, and it's so many lights, and it's so many man-made structures, it all starts to kind of go out of focus, and again, it just becomes almost like the ocean all over again, just all noise and whatever. So there is a place to find it in those places.
Yeah,
very valid.
I've always thought that I enjoyed scenarios when I'm around a lot of people, but not forced to interact with all those people.
Yeah.
Does
Well,
that
the
make
city's
sense?
the best place to go to it. You know, I lived 40 minutes from the city.
COVID
And
is
so-
what turned me off from living in a city.
well-
because I used to actually think that I would love to move somewhere one day in a populated city, like if the money made sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But after when COVID happened, I was like, nope, there's no way. I'm not doing
Yeah,
that.
you realize how delicate the system is, you know, of living in a city, and if something happens, everybody, you and everyone around you,
You are the
fucked.
weakest link.
Yeah, yeah, that's tough.
It's true. Although I will say that those things only come around about once every 100 or 100 plus years. So, you know,
Yeah,
you're good. You're good for a little while if you
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
But like I was in a very safe place. I loved it. So I was I was in the middle of the island.
Okay.
And so I would commute. I would go to the city every weekend, and I loved it. But I was always on that last train home, you know, and there was something really amazing about that chaotic sort of just, you know, swirling energy that was always going on there, and it didn't stop. So you just sort of, it's almost like when when you purchased your train ticket, you're like, all right, train ticket to chaos, you know, for like a couple of hours. Do whatever you got to do, you know, zinging out of your brain, you know, because you just become part of the noise, you know.
yeah.
But at the same point, you don't have to integrate with anybody.
Right.
So you can feel, you know, completely surrounded by everyone and completely alone at the same time. And someone who, yeah, I'm kind of okay socially, but I'm a little awkward socially. I feel very more comfortable when I'm with people that I'm comfortable with and I know in those types of environments,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, but I would a lot of times go to the city alone. And it was just because I was like, all right, I'm just going to do my own thing, you know, maybe go see a show or whatever, you know, and it was awesome. I loved going to those places, but I loved coming home on that last train home and leaving it behind, you know? And it was down here. Where do you get that city vibe? Is it Disney
Miami.
World?
Miami for sure.
Miami. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or Orlando, if you want like the city vibe with like an extra added like topper of perpetual construction on it.
yes, that always
Like-
seems like something is being built or left halfway built.
Yeah.
And
That's just Florida
completely untouched.
State. I think all Florida is like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Also,
But
Tampa.
it's pretty particularly bad in Orlando.
Tampa is a very crowded place, and the whole area surrounding that Tampa area.
Sure.
I lived there for a number of years too.
Really? Okay.
Not Tampa proper. But
You've lived all over, but yet right?
I've lived in like a triangle
Okay.
of Florida.
Everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up here. I grew up in PSL.
Okay.
When I was like 12 or like 11, I moved to Tampa, not Tampa proper, but like Brandon area, which is like on the like surrounding, and went through middle school there. Then I moved to Daytona Beach, went to high school there, and then after graduating high school, I moved back here.
Okay.
So we're in a triangle, pretty much.
Yeah.
And of all the places, honestly, I like here the best because I think I'm biased because I'm from here, so it's the most familiar. I don't like Tampa at all. I would rather go to Daytona if I had to choose between those
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
two. Daytona has a much more a chiller vibe to me than Tampa does. I don't know how to explain it really. I don't know. Like, I didn't live in either of those places as an adult. So, like, I didn't go out and do much adult things as I could do now. So, maybe that's part of shaping my perspective on it. But,
yeah.
I mean, at high school, like, I did go out and do some stuff, but it wasn't like going out and drinking, like, or like going to lounges and bars and doing, I wasn't doing open mics and I wasn't out and about doing stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Daytona always felt more relaxed to me, except for International Speedway Boulevard, which is right by this, you know, where the racetrack is.
Right.
That little section is terrifying.
Good word. Yeah.
And then Tampa is just so, I mean, you could say this technically about every city, but it's just so insanely congested. Like, that city was just not built like to have that many people there. It feels like.
Well, I feel like that's where a lot of Florida is right now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we're in this very chaotic state.
Endless
that we're in
construction
now.
to try to accommodate endless population growth.
Yeah. It's interesting. And it's so funny too, because I remember distinctly growing up in Stewart, like not to keep on this too long, because there is more I want to ask you about, like your music and stuff, just like immediately after this. But like I want to. But like the
I'm loving this.
I've noticed like growing up in Stewart, like always hearing tell of St. Lucie and the kind of place it is. And I remember in high school specifically hearing about
what lore did you hear?
Basically how they were like basically preparing for something like this to happen and like overexpanded to shit, and then like almost pretty much went under as a town because of how much money they put into expansion, with nobody wanting to live there, because St. Lucie almost universally was understood to be the shithole of the Treasure Coast. Like
It's not okay.
For those who weren't familiar with Fort Pierce,
It's right.
Yeah,
No. That's the key right there. Because PSL is not good luck.
Oh yeah, you really tighten that up. That's fine.
Good luck.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, we got this part.
PSL is not shitty in the way that a shitty city is shitty. It's shitty to people who are looking for stuff to do, because PSL is really a sleepy old people town where you go to get away from everything else that's going on around it.
Yeah, it's actively disconnected from everything.
Yes.
There's no.
It's shitty in the fact that it's kind of boring.
Consider
not
the fact
it's
that
like bad.
It's a coastal city with no beach access.
Yeah.
That alone should speak volumes.
Right.
Like,
But it was a good central port to get everywhere, if you think about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no beach access, right? Yeah. I am a little bit bummed about that, but, you know, I'm not permanently in PSL right now, you know, but
yeah,
just here for the time being. But would like to be a little bit closer to the beach, obviously, with what I was talking about before. But it's fine. It's fine. It's like, you know, hour and 50 minutes to Orlando, you know. Have you guys ever been over to Siesta? Because that's only like hour and 50 minutes, or maybe 2 hours, maybe a little bit more. Just due east, Siesta Key, Siesta Beach, really nice area over there. Just go out there for the whole day and still come home, you know, after, you know.
I hope so. I don't get kicked out.
Yeah. But I think it's a good location to get to every place equally, you know.
Sure.
Fair
Well,
enough.
it's kind of like
Hollywood, you know, Hollywood's got a lot of great bands that come through it, you know.
Sure, yeah.
And so I just feel like, you know, I can kind of get anywhere I need to go, anywhere between, you know, 1 to 2 hours, you know.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
but
I'm always looking for the positive in everything.
That's a huge. Well, I mean, I feel like that, if anything, is a huge benefit towards living in Florida in general, because of I-95 and the Turnpike.
And if you need a Walmart, there's plenty of them.
I was able to drive. I had to drive to Sarasota and back in like basically one trip for work, like a couple of days ago. It was like 3 hours there and 3 hours back, and it was just one road, just to the other side of the state and back.
Yeah,
95 is awesome.
It was nice. It was a good vibe. It was a good road. Took you know, a lot of scenic routes and all that. It's cool because like you can kind of get everywhere in the state within like a reasonable amount of time.
if you're in this area, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or if you have like, if you're within driving distance of I-95, pretty much you can get pretty much anywhere in the state like relatively quickly, the panhandle notwithstanding. But like, it's also kind of shitty because then I feel like that in part lends itself to why, like what I was talking about earlier about the turnover rate of people, how like I live in Jupiter, I work in Stewart, and a lot of my current musical ties and connections are operating like in Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
So like I am beholden to this strip of concrete and asphalt in order for me to even like function like at baseline. There's no walking infrastructure here. It's like you have a car or you are SOL.
Oh, that's it.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, but there's ups and downs to that.
I'm a little bit pessimistic yet hopeful that this whole like train situation they're trying to make
the Bright Line.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that it becomes a thing for real.
The fact that I'm pretty sure they've confirmed that they are building a station in Stewart, which blows my fucking mind.
Right.
The fact that that Stewart agreed to do that is insane. It's good. It's a good thing. but holy shit. Like that was the last place I would expect like there to be like a confirmation of, because I already know how weird Stewart is with like, because Stewart's been expanding
everything.
Yes. Again, having grown up here my entire life, I've seen how it's changed in the direction that it's changing in. And like, I can understand why they would want it there, but for all the reasons that like certain things haven't cropped up, like culturally, I wouldn't expect this to be the spot. Everybody was saying it was going to be Fort Pierce. That was going to be getting the
Which
bright line.
in my head kind of feels like it fits better. Like it kind of makes more sense.
Well, Fort Pierce already has a train line running through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's why people were thinking that the Bright Line would be like the spot for it. But apparently they're building like a whole new station in Stewart, which is like,
hey, I love that. I growing up on Long Island, the Long Island Railroad took you from Montauk Point, which was sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean, all the way to the city, and it had all these little offshoots, and some of those offshoots were really nice towns, and so just the availability to be able to take the train over and get dropped off at Stewart, and then I'm all for it. I'm so psyched about that, and I haven't really had a chance to even enjoy the train line here, but that's just something that I'm excited about, and I did hear about that, so I'm really hoping it comes through.
Me too.
Comes to fruition.
I'm glad to finally.
And I love Stewart, so
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to have a connection to like down south. Like I could go to Miami feasibly without having to put that wear on my car. Or
Yeah.
I think it's pay $20 and have some, and just take the old rolling box down there.
Yeah.
And it's a good. I
like rolling boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
I like trains.
But yeah,
big Thomas the Tank Engine fan.
Yeah, very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my dad was a HO guy, so we were always doing
HO. What's that?
So HO scale model trains.
Oh, okay.
Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah, the whole house was freaking.
Bro,
it was
a
crazy.
dying art for real.
Yeah,
The model trains.
cool.
Yeah, honestly, yes. Very, very cool.
That's why I got into.
That's definitely something I've learned to appreciate in my old age.
model trains.
Good model trains.
For me, my version of that is Lego trains.
All right, okay.
Because there's a huge community.
Yeah,
and like culture around Lego building, like
absolutely
Lego City.
Oh building. Yeah.
But then
don't get me started on Legos, man.
The train aspect of it is huge.
Yeah,
and I love it. It's so because I grew up with Lego as like pretty much the only toy that I enjoyed as a kid for some reason.
Yep.
It was either like Lego or like Nerf guns, or like pretty much the only two things I played with.
There you go.
I was not really into like cars or I don't know, like
action figures.
I was never really into that kind of stuff as a kid.
Did you have Super Soakers?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It wasn't something I played with much, but
did you have Super Soakers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a regular.
That became
Lego was the thing.
Big as Lego. I mean, it was just like they just didn't stop with how big they got.
Yeah.
And
how powerful they got, because it's only bro, now with YouTube, like it's funny you bring that up, because I actually just the algorithm just recently started feeding me shorts and like videos about Nerf guns for some reason. It's similar in the same vein. And dude, the custom mods that these like 30 to 40 year old dudes are putting into their fucking to where their Nerf gun will puncture drywall. Like, bro, what are you
or be like automatic?
Yeah, like how and why?
Not just modded Nerf guns, but fully made from the ground up.
Yeah,
guns that shoot Nerf darts.
Right.
Yeah, like they're
not Nerf branded, but they're just like
they learn the technology guns. And just are manufacturing their own.
And you
Nerf,
can buy them
to be lethal.
Yes,
you can buy them because they made like it's like a hobby / sport akin to like airsoft or paintball. It's just Nerf.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like. It's cool. Like I kind of, because they're not that expensive. I kind of want to get one. They're cool.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot.
Anyway, getting back to Legos and
well, I don't remember where I was going with that. I just like Lego trains for some reason.
Oh yeah, Lego trains. Yeah,
I just love, like, every once in a while I will sit down and go to a little rabbit hole of like, because there's some pretty big conventions in multiple places around the world where people like different building clubs or groups will come together and all convene at one like convention center or warehouse or whatever and assemble. Every team has their own layout, but then they come together and connect it to a bunch of other people's layouts
That's
too.
awesome.
And make
I love
one
that stuff.
massive thing.
Yeah.
That to me is really dope. And just the like, I feel like something about Lego as a system, like cohesive system that all works together, for some reason, like really tickles my brain in a way that made by hand model stuff doesn't for me.
Gotcha.
Like not to discredit it, because it's its own kind of art and hobby of its own, but something about Lego, the Lego version of that, is like way more appealing to me.
There's something cool about that.
It's like an open-ended puzzle.
I don't know what it
with no real solution.
Yeah.
And I always loved collecting. I always loved getting Lego sets for birthdays and whatever.
Dude.
But I wouldn't really build what was on the cover. I just put it all together and then just went nuts, creative mind. And what that ended up turning into is, once I got into college, I ended up deciding I wanted to purchase Lego in bulk. And back in the early 2000s, there was a website that mimicked eBay. And it wasn't up for too long because of rights. So they had actually shut it down. But I was a part of it for the few years it was active. And it was called Brick Bay.
That sounds familiar.
And
now
it was an eBay for people to buy and sell Lego in bulk. And so what I would do is I would purchase, say, like $500 of just bulk green Legos or bulk yellow, like whatever.
They
I would
still have a version of that now called Brick Link.
Oh, okay.
Brick Link is basically, now it's owned by Lego, but
Interesting.
it used to be its own independent thing.
That's awesome. Okay.
That was, I don't know who made it. I don't know exactly the origins of it, but it was very community driven. And the whole point of it was to categorize and catalog basically every piece that exists. By name and number.
Yep.
Every variant of the piece, every color, every set that's ever been made. But it also became a marketplace where basically, if you're looking for a piece, like if you're looking for a rare piece or something,
you would find it there.
You could find it there.
Yeah.
And the pricing on the market price would be based on basically how much it costs on that site.
Gotcha.
Pretty much.
Okay. Interesting.
And you can also order bulk.
So it sounds like this pretty much the same type of thing, right? So
is now, yeah. And now that Lego owns it, also they're able to support that bulk. I mean, they could already kind of do it.
I will say I got some steals with that. And I would get so many,
especially
just the 2x4s.
How long ago were you talking?
2x6. This is like early 2000s, 2004 to 2008.
Amazing time to do that.
Yeah.
Because like I would say over the last 20 some odd years, Lego became so adult. Like the the people who grew up with it are now adults and they still are into it.
Correct.
So it became very geared towards adults.
Well, I will say this:
that have the money to like buy so much, and it kind of like prices out like younger people to a degree.
Yeah.
So it kind of like inflated the market a little bit. But so like back then was a really good time to be
purchasing it and
collecting.
Yes, and I did sell them all. At one point, and I made a killing.
That's
nice.
At least doubled what I had paid for
That's
it.
awesome.
So it was an interesting investment because I wasn't thinking it was an investment.
Yeah.
I was just thinking I was just gonna have fun with this stuff, but I built like the large scale things with the Legos.
That's awesome.
Just from my brain or pictures or whatever, and that was my main thing. I loved it.
Growing up,
it's a creative toy.
It is.
Yeah, you talking about bulk reminds me of like one of my favorite childhood memories was my grandpa for like I think my 12th or my 13th birthday, one of the two, just mailed me a check for $200. And like as soon as I saw that piece of paper and saw how much money it was, it's like, Mom, take me to Toys R Us forthwith at Godspeed immediately.
Toys R Us always had the most banging sets too.
Oh man!
With that $200, 100% of it plus some extra out of my mom's own wallet went to just buying 4 giant fucking tubs of just bulk Bionicle pieces.
Yeah.
I was the Bionicle kid personally. Yeah, that was what
Do you have any of the Bionicle comic books?
Yes, I had the lore book. I had all the movies.
I have them all. I got them all.
Dude, my fucking
Still have them? You still have them?
Sure.
I still have them.
Oh, that's so baller. I still have my original.
They're in the hallway, and my kids read them sometimes.
Nice.
Because
Hell yeah, dude.
I'm trying to get them
Pass that
into
knowledge down.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Bro,
Yep.
my one of my prized possessions is I still have the original like the Borak Queens set, the red and the blue ones that would like
Shut
rock 'em
up.
sock 'em robots.
Seriously?
Yeah, I got that
Children
shit.
need to know about Matanui.
On God.
Absolutely.
To know.
Yeah.
Make Matanui great again. No, but bro, yeah, that was my shit. And this is funny because you reminded me of that, like with buying in bulk. Because I remember it was the same. I went through the same evolution of just like getting all these sets and then just having all these parts and then building all of my own mocks out of all of these parts to the point where it's just like I don't even want the sets. Just give me the fucking pieces.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was really cool about that was that they would have like all of, like the weirdo pieces. Like they would have pieces in colors that you wouldn't find in any other set.
No, that's
or
right.
the masks that you wouldn't find in any other color.
Correct.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that shit was like, yo.
Yeah.
I always grew up doing like when I would get a set, I would build the thing that it's is.
Sure.
But then I'd probably play with it and or display it for like a couple weeks.
Yep.
And then start building something else. And I'm like, I need this piece. I know that piece exists on this set. Oh, no.
Right. Yeah.
Start slowly taking it apart to build something else.
That's right.
And it would become its own thing.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I don't, necessarily buy Lego all the time anymore, but occasionally a set comes out that I'm like, I like that model and I'll buy it. But now my thing is I specifically like Star Wars, like starships. And I like to customize them. I will build them the way the instructions lay out.
Yep.
But then I'll go back after the fact and start modifying.
I love that.
And I create my own story around like who owns this ship.
Dude, that's so nerdy, and I love it.
I love right? It's very nerdy. It's very dorky.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I was like, Lego and Star Wars were two things that I loved separately, and they were a match made in heaven together.
Absolutely.
So it's just like, that was my main
But
thing.
with kids comes purchasing more Legos and getting more Lego sets and everything.
Yep.
Now they have this big bin now, and whatever we tried building, and maybe we didn't get all the way there because they were young or whatever,
Yeah.
but it all went into this bin, and then every once in a while they'll just dump out the whole bin and they'll start creating their whole little worlds on those like the green square bases,
Yes, the base plates,
and they'll just like start, and then like my kid's he's like, this is a big pool with animals in it. It's a pool for animals. And that's freaking awesome.
Hell yeah.
Who thought of that,
What I did for a long time with my buddy Andreas, shout out Andreas, is because I had a hand-me-down bin like that too. I had a bunch of my own collection.
Yeah.
But then one day, out of the blue, my mom comes home and says that her coworker's son like kind of grew out of playing with them.
Yep.
And passed them and gave them to me.
Shut up.
So I got this bin of like older parts that I didn't grow up with.
Yeah.
So some of it was a little unfamiliar, but but eventually, my stuff and that stuff combined into one bin that we would dump out, and we would make like mock battles where we would set up like two sides. Like
awesome.
like the way that you as a kid imagine a war taking place in your mind.
Right.
When in reality it doesn't really work like that.
Right.
But we would have like two like opposing like makeshift bases, like fortresses or whatever
So
that
great.
we would build.
Yeah.
And we would create crazy dumb characters with their own backstories that don't make sense. Like it would be funny. Like no, like purposely they didn't make sense. Like we created this is a deep
cut.
core memory here.
Okay, here we go.
There was a team that we made that was like our version of the A team, and it was called Technoforce. And it was these like 4 or 5 characters that were just built from random pieces that like did not make sense. Like one of them, like the cylinder piece, just the plain like three stud tall cylinder.
Yep.
Replace the guy's head with one of those.
Yeah.
The black cylinder. And
I was going to ask you, like,
then,
did you ever make any of the people taller by putting the pieces in there?
We
And
do
now
kind
they're
of
like this.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of the guys was like that, and his weapon was a boat oar.
Yeah.
Like, and then like another guy like what was it? Another guy like didn't have legs, and he was just like attached to like just like the torso was like attached to like a bigger thing that was like his body. And then the leader of the group was one of the robots from. Do you remember Exoforce?
Yes.
The like anime mech like type of Lego theme.
Nope.
Do you remember?
Yeah, no. Keep going though.
It was a mid 2000s thing.
Yeah.
That was around my prime time.
Yeah, it was literally an anime inspired like kind of like Gundam mech fighting type of theme, and one side was humans, one side was robots, and I had a few of those robot characters, and the leader of this group was one of those robots riding I forget what they're called, but one of those green lizards from Star Wars that you can ride. Not like the one that Obi-Wan rides.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember what they're called.
Oh, yeah.
I have the image in my head.
I don't have the brain power to remember.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking
early
about.
Lego Star Wars, that they made one of those, and it was like the body was like two big pieces, the legs were two pieces,
Yep.
the head can move, and then the tail was made of like three pieces.
Yep.
So a robot riding that, and then like a team of like 4 or 5 other nonsense characters, like, and we made up a backstory and everything.
The fucked up thing is that all of this sounds like canon Warhammer 40k lore.
This is my favorite part of the conversation so far.
Yeah, everything you've just.
I'll go like literally. I like sat up. My back is straight. I'm like, let's go, Lego people.
Yes,
I love Lego. So
oh god, bro, you are in excellent company. Like,
and now
I'm gonna go play with them tonight. And my kids are in Atlanta.
Hell yeah, hell yeah,
hell yeah. Kids are away.
They come home. There's just a fortress in the playroom. You know. All right, whose side are we taking? You know?
Bro, beautiful. I love
And
that.
now I we talked about this with Slugger too. I need to find that bin that I'm talking about, because there were so many pieces in there that are extremely rare and unique that even if I could sell them for money because they're actually worth like that level of value, but I just wish that I had them just to say that I have them.
Yeah.
Like I got that exclusive ass piece that they made 500 of, or whatever.
Yep.
Slugger is a Lego YouTuber that we had on the podcast in like October.
Yeah, that was like our first like internet guest.
Yeah,
Like a celebrity guest.
that's a cool. You should check that out sometimes.
I will.
Since you're so into Lego.
I
I'm
will.
very happy to hear you're into Lego.
One of my favorite things that that's Lego related was there was this guy Jacob something. He considers himself a Lego prophet.
Profit.
Yeah.
What does this mean?
Mm-hmm. And so
He sounds like somebody we needed to get on the podcast
He-
immediately.
Right?
100%.
The Lego Profit.
So he created a book line and also an online version called the Brick Testament, which is all the stories of the Bible portrayed in Lego.
What? That's amazing.
Yes.
How?
And it is insane.
Are we talking like pictures, or are they
Starting from the from the Old Testament.
Okay.
Okay. And the Old Testament was my favorite book. He had a book called Stories of the Old Testament, and so Brick Testament. So everything was done, and painstaking amount of time and energy and effort put into every single one of these scenes that he shot beautifully.
So he would build the scene.
Correct.
And photograph.
And then he would have the verse underneath or
That's
the
amazing.
passage that
I
was
need this.
representing it. And so it was great because, you know, sometimes when, like, I was brought up Christian, and when you're hearing these stories, your brain sort of kind of puts together what it probably looked like, right? But we don't really know, you know? And so that's all he did. He's like, I didn't think of anything that I grew up knowing.
Mm-hmm.
I just took this passage and I replicated it as Lego. And when you see it so black and
baller.
white, some of the scenes were so hysterical. And it's just an image.
Yeah.
And you're just looking at it, right?
Is this something that's publicly available?
Oh yeah, I have the books, whatever, and they're also available online on his bricktestament.com, and it's literally the most genius thing I've ever seen.
Put it on screen.
Put on the screen. Let me tell you something. I can give you one example, for instance, of the flood, right? And he just used the blue base, the flat blue base, and all he had was just a couple of heads, just Lego heads, just stuck on there, as these people drowning from the flood. Like that's what I'm talking about. It's that level of like some were really chaotic and some were really simple.
Is this
Brick Testament? That's it.
The brickbible.com?
Yep.
Yo,
I'm telling you,
Sorry.
the most entertaining thing that you could read and look at, and it would just perfect and just amazing. And I'm so glad I was able to share about this, because who else is nerdy enough to even get excited about something like this?
And
I was the only one.
It's perfect because I also
in my circle.
I also grew up Christian too.
Oh, okay,
Yep,
yeah.
same here.
Yeah.
So like I also like have my own memory and
There is
mental interpretation.
this will mean so much more because of that, and
That's amazing.
it's just wonderful. And some of them you're like, wow, I just never thought of it like that. But meanwhile, that's exactly what the verse says. It's portrayed. It's just wonderful. It's just wonderful.
The sun is his wheel piece. I love that.
I'm telling you, man, you will not stop. It just goes on and on and on. It's so good.
I also really love there was a very distinct phase of my early internet years where I was just consumed by Lego like stop motion animation videos.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're talking about.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I noticed there's a recurring trend, another thing that the algorithm seems to be wanting to feed me are videos of just like side by side, or here's the original movie scene, and then here is it recreated in Lego stop motion.
Mm-hmm.
Like that seems to be like a very common thing going around, and I love to see it. It's really cool.
Well, the Lego movies, they just took off using those, and they're so great.
Yeah.
They're so great.
Bro, the Lego, what they did with the Lego movie was so like mind-blowingly cool.
Absolutely.
The fact that it is mostly like actual stop motion or whatever isn't stop motion, they use actual pieces and how the pieces would actually move and interact with each other.
So
Correct.
the movie it's actually animated.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's just rendered extremely realistically.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they used whatever software they used, they basically uploaded it's a catalog of every existing piece that does exist.
Correct.
So they can't just make up like
They were very true to the
Exactly.
like if you compare it to like a lot of early Lego games where like the terrain will be like some render of like a low poly texture or whatever, but in the Lego movie every single thing was built like with brick.
It's wonderful. And literally the storylines could have bombed, and I would have been there with the stupidest, biggest smile on my face the whole time.
Same.
It just so happened that the storyline is like actually
Really
good. Yeah. Like
Everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome. That's
everything's better when you're part of a team, bro.
it.
It's real. Real shit.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Damn. Where do we go from here? Damn. Like,
Oh no, I feel like we all just like
Started
peaked.
from beaches.
Yeah. And you want
Talking
to
about the beach.
Yeah, being in awe,
Now we're talking about-
and developing yourself in the presence of the beauty of nature. Sometimes all it takes is just that pile of Lego bulk that you just pull out of the floor to feel that same sense of just like,
buy your kids Lego.
yes,
Buy your kids Legos.
bro, throw the iPad in the fucking trash, buy them Lego.
Also, something I learned with kids: don't keep all the toys separate.
Oh, because I love mixed
I'm OCD with mixing things, right?
Yeah.
I don't like when I have a plate of food. I don't like when my food, one thing's touching something else. I like everything separate.
I love mixing.
I'm the exact, I just mix everything up in one big mesh. But what were you saying?
later.
Heard. Finally, something we disagree on.
Yes.
About damn time.
But yeah, I'm telling you, man, I was like so anal when my kids would come in and just mess up all the toys. They're not even my toys.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? You know, you can't put that on here, you know? And then, and I was reading up some article
Barbie
online.
and G.I. Joe would never meet.
That's actually, those would, in some way, those would be in the same bin because those are both still action figures. You know what I mean? But like everything sort of like had to be compartmentalized for me.
Yeah.
And then having kids just totally turns that up on itself, you know?
I was like that with Lego in terms of I didn't like, and I still don't like to mix in other brands
Yeah.
of like Mega Block or whatever.
Bro,
That would
Mega,
snap
that's
in
just
with it.
heresy.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I look at Mega Blocks with like active disgust.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how the
That's
fuck?
right. That's right.
Like, sorry, my parents actually loved me, bro. But fucking good luck with that.
But let me tell you
I
something.
am jealous that Mega Block has or whatever company they are now, because I think they have a different name. I'm jealous that they have Halo.
Yeah, that was a huge dub for them.
Because
really.
I wish there was like Lego Halo stuff.
One of these days.
But
yeah, no, just like their creativity would have been stumped without being able to just join all these different things together.
Mm-hmm.
You just open up their minds to be able to really kind of explore everything creative that they have by mixing these toys together. And it was a really big hurdle for me to be like, all right, at least I know at the end of the day, I'll go in there and help them. We'll put everything back, you know, but to never be upset and, you know, and kind of put out of place when you're mixing all these toys together, because they're building these incredible things.
Yeah.
And I never would have, I'm like, wow, I never would have done that when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
One of the only other toys that I was really into as a kid, going back again, was Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yep.
Because I had a collection of VHS tapes of the show, and also a lot of them would come with a lot of them would come with a character, like a wooden, like train character.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Your collection.
Yep,
And they had wooden track pieces.
I had this exact. I was wondering if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The ones with the wooden tracks. I had the exact same shit.
Yeah.
So I had a big toy box full of, like, dedicated to just that. And I would I had so many varied pieces that I could create like a new unique layout like every day.
That's
and I would use Lego sometimes to build like the supports for like bridges or tunnels, or I'd use the Lego people like as like, or like build cargo or whatever out of Lego to put into the cars. Like those are the only toys that I would mess with, that I would like mix stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are like the only two toys I ever grew up like really actively wanting all the time. Pretty much.
Yeah, same.
But yeah.
How do you feel like that played a lot or a large part in like you wanting to be a musician and like pursuing like create like music as a creative art? Because for me personally, my fascination and creativity with Lego translates almost one for one with what I'm fascinated and how my creative drive is with my music. Like there's a very, not necessarily one for one, but there's definitely like a strong force, like a correlation there in my development. That
it makes a lot of sense for you, because what's integral to your music is having to build and put the pieces together of your equipment.
Yeah, live. Yeah, with my setup and with the individual pieces of the tracks that I am literally live building before your very eyes. You know, and like I don't know that like, do you feel like? I guess I'm just trying to draw a correlation.
I feel like Legos just in general were the perfect toy for someone creative.
Yeah.
And music is the audible version of Lego, where, you know, it's sort of just, you get to do it. There's just no limitations for music. Mm-hmm. Even if you end up having a sound that's sort of congruent for an album, right?
Just like you would have a theme in a set.
Yeah. That's right.
Ultimately, the pieces.
Ooh, that almost kind of wraps around to what we were originally talking about before the beach, which was like the sound, for instance, that everyone, I think every musician is always looking to try to find like, who are they? And I don't know if you're ever done, but maybe you're satisfied once you find exactly what you're good at, you know? And so I know before we were talking about if it's okay if I'm honing this back in, is when I was a part of my band up in New York, Walking Sideways, where we had all these different types of, these members that were into completely different genres of music, and then only incorporating every element of that in every song, you know? And then there was probably some element of that where, even though that was such a creative and cool idea with great outcome of recordings, maybe it still wasn't a place it wasn't a place for me where I felt internally supported to figure out who I was still. So I was still this product, 1/4 of this amazing project, but I was never one-to-one with exactly what I was looking for instance, you know? And so I think after that bout, when I moved down here of just feeling complacent, creatively and not really myself. What ended up coming out, I've never heard out of myself before, you know? And so I think what happened was I took my instrument and matched vocally what was coming out, you know, because my main thing is my words, right? When I'm writing a song, it's the words. So as long as whatever instrument I'm playing sort of vibes on the feeling of what those words are representing, and that, again, something that came back from the Smashing Pumpkins, did really good job with that. Singing really kindly and softly, and then all of a sudden screaming with heavy distortion or whatever. It was always the music always represented the vocals and the words that were being said. Mm-hmm. That's my main thing, you know, is I don't come up with if I have a guitar riff first, if that ever does happen, I put it on the back burner until it matches a verse or something that comes out that I'm creating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the lyrics and message come primary.
For me, that's most important, right? Because I'm spilling out onto paper. And I say on paper, right? Because I'm old, right? But it's like nobody's done paper anymore. But that's sort of just like, that's how I do it, right? Like I get out my stuff. Then I'm like, all right, now what can I write to this musically that will take these mere words on a plate and, you know, project it up into the universe, you know? And that's what happened. And I never felt as creative as I did after that bout of almost internal creative sadness that I was in for that 6 to 8 months. And then once it came out, I was like, it's freaking awesome, you know? And I love that. And I think it opened up my eyes to see how other musicians can benefit from sort of in the same respects, sort of if their instrument is their main focus or if their writing is their main focus, you know. I'm open. And for instance, like Almond Pistachio, I brought him up before, you know, like watching his craft of his writing and the music behind and the sort of the music that he chooses to put behind his words. Mm-hmm. It's so beyond perfect, and it just propels his words, you know, and he's got so many things going, right? He's got the comedy element of his stuff, but yet because he matched his music up so well with his lyrics, you can almost take a line that he would say that can be completely humorous and off color or whatever, and you can take it seriously.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that is just like that mental maze is crazy. I'm like, God, I'm not even laughing. Like I just like,
I wasn't just blowing hot air up your ass. I've been saying, bro.
And there's definitely an art to. And I don't want to paint Allman with one brush of.
You
comedy.
Can paint me with any brush you want, baby.
I don't want to blanket label him as like a comedy.
No, he's not, and that's why I made sure to explain it as
well. That's the cool
one
thing.
of the elements of his writing.
But that's what it was for a little bit, and I remember distinctly we were at one of our powwows, our post of my powwows at Galaxy Diner, because that was like the only place that was open that late at night. And I was telling him, I was like, man, I can't wait. City Diner, yes. Okay. I always get the two mixed up. But I was always like, I mentioned to him, I was like, man, I really can't wait to hear like serious angsty Almond Pistachio, because like, he had just released Patty Cake, and like a couple of other more jokey songs.
That's the OG song right there, man. Yes. That's the first one I heard. Yep. Yeah.
And then, he started like working on and releasing music that he had already been working on at that point,
right?
But actually like getting it finished and released, that was like that more serious, like somber, like darker kind of like vibe that still kind of maintained that like grooviness.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, and I was like, this is it. Like, this is fun. And then the whole album, Almond Avenue, out now where all good music is streamed.
Mm-hmm. So good, by the way.
Yeah, it comes together as like this really thorough, like whole body of work that kind of like runs that gamut of emotion and then is like very dynamic in that regard, while still having that main like core vibe, that main like nut in your mouth taste.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly.
The kind of, you pretty much nailed what I was going to say. The point I was going to make about the comedy aspect of it is the comedy aspect of like that type of music is an art of its own, because like it's really hard to have like a funny line or lyric or whatever within a song and have it be a joke but taken seriously in the greater context of the song.
That's right.
You know,
it's hard to do that without coming across as corny.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that it's like in that threshold happens when there is a discernible level of like care taking into the music itself. Like you're not just writing it to be funny, like you actually like care about the whole, like how the whole thing is crafted.
Absolutely.
Or at least just have the taste to be able to craft something that is like something that stands alone beyond just the comedy aspect.
Absolutely.
Of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And all the other elements that he incorporates, for instance, you know, it's just a great example.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great
Absolutely.
example. Yeah. And I love him.
Yeah, great guy.
So yeah,
absolutely.
We could just talk about him this whole podcast. I'd be so satisfied.
He's an interesting character.
Yeah.
He's been on here a few times early on, pre-video era, but you can have it back soon.
Word.
And I'm looking forward to part 2 of that album.
Yeah.
Because partially for a selfish reason, because I developed a track with him that's supposed to be on that album.
Okay.
That needs to be reworked a little bit, but
Okay.
it's still there. So I'm hoping
That's
that
exciting.
comes out.
Yeah.
one day.
Very cool.
I guess question I've been thinking about this whole time that I was trying to figure out when I could pivot to, and now I'm going to do it. That's how you segue.
That's how you segue.
You make up the segue. Where does the name Riviers Unchosen come from?
Oof. Okay. Well, you know, interestingly enough, when I first thought of the name, I sort of just was in a state where I had all these songs coming to me, one after the other, after the other, after the other. Like I said, I had 4 in 1 week. Had Riddle and Rat, Empty, which is co-written by one of my old friends up in New York, and who was not like a musician. So I just kind of helped put, you know, took some words, kind of put them together. I love doing that. I love like collaborating with someone that is like, I can offer this, but then you can offer that, you know, and that was really
Sounds like
cool.
a theme, kind of a running theme with you.
Yeah,
a little bit.
yeah. I love it. And so this guy, Gabe, and he was just like, here, I just had these words, whatever. And he was almost embarrassed to give them to me. You know, sometimes when it's like, you write something, you're like, you don't think
Cocker?
it's good.
Gabe Cocker?
No, it's not.
No, a different one. Okay, gotcha.
What, he up from New York?
No,
you know, Gabe from, okay.
no.
But anyway, just, yeah. So it was like kind of that kind of situation where I was just like, first of all, this is awesome. I could totally work with this. Shifted some things around, you know, whatever. And then like put some music behind it, recorded demos. Those are my first 2 demos, was Riddle and Rat and Empty. And those are the first 2 songs I started playing at Harmony Music Lounge. And even in working as a collab type of a thing where I'm using somebody else's words, I was already kind of finding my voice that I had never found before. And so the style that I sing in that came out on those first 2 demos, Riddle and Rat and Empty, with this like raspy sort of, it's clean, but it's raspy, whatever, and like a little dirty. It's just a representation of like what I feel, you know, is just like, I just, like, I couldn't believe when I first heard it, I was like, God, I never sang like that in my life. You know, I had the raspiness when I sucked, you know, back in the day, but like being able to incorporate that now after feeling more confident in my vocals and my pitch and all that kind of stuff, you know, and I'm just like, God, it's just like, wow, I couldn't believe what I felt unearthing within myself, and then having something visibly here that I could look at and be proud of. And only finding that in your 40s was a very big deal for me. It was a long road. And it was just like, wow, it finally came together. I was like, wow, this is like really cool. I can dance with this entity, you know, and just like have a great time with it. And so after I did those 2 songs, I sent it back to him, and this guy's like, I cannot even, he goes, I don't even feel like I wrote those words. Like taking something and then just kind of throwing it up into the air and creating something magical with it. I get so excited with that kind of stuff, you know, namely, even if it's stuff that's coming out from me, you know, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put this together and put these, you know, these chords behind it or this kind of style behind it, whatever. And if I find that right style that matches what the words are explaining and what the words are talking about, it's like a party, you know, it's just so fun. It's so great. You know, kind of the same thing that you guys would feel in the work that you guys do.
Well, as you're describing
when those pieces come together,
as you're describing this, I'm relating to exactly what you're talking about, making that track with Omen.
Yeah.
That nobody's, except for some close friends, have heard. And because it's that same kind of feeling where I was sitting with him making the music part while he's also working on the lyrics and everything. And then when everything came together, it felt like the sum of it was greater than, what's the phrase?
Greater than the sum of its parts. Mm-hmm.
Like the finished thing feels like I feel like I didn't make that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I'm like kind of proud of it in a sense.
Absolutely.
And look forward to the finished thing.
That's right.
Because like I feel that same feeling you're talking about.
Yeah. So right. So those first two songs, I partially will have to say that it did start with these two songs that were co-written by someone else. Mm-hmm. And so there might've been an element, some level of, I don't know exactly what the term is that I'm looking for, but like some sort of element that was outside of me to almost act as a mirror to not only what I can do with it, but who I was in the completion of the project. And it's just these two silly songs, you know, and
it helps shape a vision.
It really did. And so, right. And so what I would say is maybe not finding yourself doesn't always just include knowing who you are, but knowing who you are in the midst of other people's creativity.
Well, and yeah, because that I was just thinking about that point specifically when you brought up the point about really discovering yourself in the context of being like brought to bear with the vastness of nature and like your small part in it and how that leads to you really finding yourself. But the opposite point you can make to that is that it helps to be able to. Oh, I thought that was coming through the speakers. It helps to be able to like kind of like triangulate who you are through the interactions with others.
Yeah.
You know, and like not in such a way that you're seeking validation, but just by like being
where do
yourself.
you fit?
Exactly.
Kind of.
Well, focus takes two eyes, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can't tell any depth unless you have both your eyes working, right? And that's sort of the triangle idea, which is you have two eyes and then you have a focal point.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you cannot focus on that focal point with just one eye, you know? So it kind of alludes to exactly what you're talking about, you know? And that's sort of what kind of jump started this thing. I even think Gabe knows. I haven't spoken to him. I don't think he even knows what, you know, his involvement in that at all. I mean, he knew I was excited about the finished products. But I will say that those two songs led me to the place where I figured out what I was capable of doing with myself, you know, and what was able to come from within. Whereas I felt super confident and excited and proud of what was created. And that's when Devil's Tree came around.
Okay.
Was I found this tree in Oak Hammock Park while I was hiking, walking around. It was not hiking, just getting lost in this woods, which I love doing. And came across this tree, found out it had a name. Mm-hmm. I looked up the story behind it. Horrific story, by the way.
We have an episode about that. Early Ghost in the Aux episode.
Excellent, really.
Because the inception of this podcast kind of revolves around the Devil's Tree in a sense.
It was also a large part of episode 50, the episode 50 special. We talked about it a lot.
Yeah. I'll give you the short version because I don't want to derail from your story too much. Short version is right before COVID started, my friend Kevin and I were shooting the shit and trying to figure out ideas for a podcast. And then our initial idea was to try to figure out a niche to grow within, and our niche was going to be talking about paranormal things and music, and then sometimes where they can intersect, or just the intersection of that culture. And one of the things we wanted to do, which maybe we could still do one of these days, was go and explore and record our experience visiting so-called haunted locations. And then investigate kind of in a, if ghost hunters were real, like not a TV show,
right?
Like go and actually go to locations and see what kind of vibes do we actually get? What do we see? What do we hear? What is it warranted to be talked about as spooky as it is? You know, like that was one of the ideas. And because the Devil's Tree is so like iconic in like Port St. Lucie lore, and it was like one of the first things we had an idea.
That's awesome
to do.
Yeah.
We didn't.
So that was very intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was an early like focal point for the podcast.
Super cool.
I was just laughing because I thought of the idea of us recording a podcast at Devil's Tree and then just having a third mic just like pointed at like one of those like spirit boxes or something for like the ghost to communicate. If the ghosts want to chime in, we have this EMF box right here with just mic'd up.
We sort of did that. We sort of, this is the pre-Trey era. We sort of did that a couple times. There's a couple episodes that say featuring Lewis.
What is that? The light that would flick on and off in your garage?
Featuring Lewis was Kevin and I. We would mess around with. We didn't take it serious because it's a gimmick and it's just for fun. But he had an app on his phone that was basically one of those EMF like reader tracker thingies, and every once in a while it would just spit out words of supposedly what the spirits are trying to communicate, right? And we had it plugged into the mixer.
Hell yeah.
And so it would, whenever it would just spit out something, it was recorded, and we would say our guest was Lewis the ghost because we asked it what his name was, and like it said Lewis at some point. And we're like, that's your name. So there's like 2 episodes I think that say featuring Lewis in there. We should bring that back.
Absolutely.
This is now this has become the most entertaining part of the whole podcast. So the tree. Yeah. I mean, it was just like, I didn't know anything about it.
Okay.
But I saw it. I got lost, and I pulled out my phone to find out where my car was so I can walk in the right direction. There was a maze of trails through that park. And
that's another thing.
They don't really make sense.
They don't. That's another thing a lot of people don't know about the Devil Tree, actually, is that a lot of people will like hear about it and think it's just in the middle of the woods somewhere and you got to find it. It's literally in a public park.
It's in a public park.
You can follow the trails and you will find it.
Exactly. Actually. You will eventually get there. It's like a labyrinth.
But it used to be
the sure ending.
Like way back, I want to say in like the 50s, maybe that's off, but way back in the day, it was a tiny little neighborhood that was built there, like with a few houses and stuff. And that's it was secluded. The foundation of one of the houses is still there.
It was, correct. It was secluded enough in where it is.
Yeah.
Where this police officer had, felt like it was a safe place to bring, girls that he had kidnapped to where nobody would know.
Right.
And so it was a really crazy story. And I'm all about the crime show, like television shows.
Type guy.
Yeah, I love it. There's a new one that I'm addicted to right now called See No Evil.
Okay.
And it is so good. And it's all about surveillance. And they literally, they have a crime and they explain it. And then they show you how they were able to solve it just based solely on surveillance cameras.
Interesting.
Which is a new world that we live in right now. Yeah. You're not going to get away with it.
You're not getting away with much.
You ain't going to get away with it anymore. No. Right. And so it's unbelievable. And they have all the actual investigators that were involved with those crimes. They are the ones that are interviewed for the show. And they actually show you the actual surveillance footage that they used. And it's just, everything is true. If there's a reenactment, it's just in the very beginning with somebody that is maybe no longer alive, that they had to create a scenario of like, this is the last time we saw them. This is what was happening. She left for college, or he went over here, or whatever. And then they never came home. And then this is how they figured it out. Anyway, huge into that. So the story was amazing to me, how he got away with whatever he was doing for so long. And he would grab hitchhikers, sometimes from out of state.
Right. That's right.
Then he would bring them there. And so, and he slung them up, you know? And so my idea, I wasn't planning on writing a song about it, but it was one of those things where I read the story and I was at a place where I was just, my mind was waiting to just outpour creativity out. And I wasn't stopping it anymore. I was like, I'm so happy right now. Like everything's just coming out. And so that's when I decided I got to write a song about this. I felt called to. It was just like so good, but I'm a very metaphorical writer at times. And so I love the idea that I was able to take something like this crime or whatever that was going on and each little element of it, but then represent it metaphorically into something that is singable, that sounds very sort of in tune with the music, you know, and something that was catchy, you know? And so that the whole idea of Devil's Tree, which is the song that I just released today.
You heard it in the intro of
on YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. It was a long time coming to actually release it, but it was like being able to represent this story in a creative way. And it was through the eyes of the tree that I came across, because the tree was the first, you know, thing that I met.
Yeah. That was your first interaction.
That was my first interaction. Thank you. I was looking for that word.
Yeah.
This is my first interaction was the tree. And the story came later when I looked it up and found out about why was it called Devil's Tree.
Which is a little bit of a surreal thing to like interact with it.
It's insane.
And at first, and then find out later everything.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And so that, exactly. And that really helped with the songwriting element of it. But it was all, the story of the song is written through the eyes of the tree. And that is the kind of the hook for the chorus is, you know, wanderer, be weary of the rustling of the leaves. They tried to cut me down, but I resisted them with ease. Okay. Numerous people have tried to cut this tree down over the years because of its bad kind of omen historical background. But everything that they tried using to cut this tree down broke. And they have been unsuccessful.
Axes, chainsaws, right? Everything. Yeah. It wasn't working. It's amazing. That element of the story just is like mind blowing in and of itself. I think it also got set on fire.
They tried to burn it.
Yeah.
Yep. Now nothing is killing this tree.
Yeah.
It's just great. It's also this huge tree.
Pretty big tree.
Right. Yeah. It's a pretty big tree. They tried to cut me down, but I resisted them with ease. You can dance upon my roots if it helps you to breathe. But I hope you don't swing on me, Devil's Tree. And it just came out so easily. And then the music behind it, you knew I had to kind of have that sort of like that swinging element to the acoustic kind of rock element of it. Just because it sort of went along with this idea of the hanging and sort of like what was going on. It was just this whole vibe. And I'd never been put in a situation before I was writing about some bad crime that happened in a song, but it just came really naturally. It was just so fun to write. And it's such a good song, you know, and I'm so proud of it, you know, for myself,
great.
You know, and I'm not promoting that as far as like what everybody else, it was for me.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of the first song that I had written alone, that I felt this is who I am creatively as an artist. And now I can just take this and I can run with it.
I don't think I've heard every one of your singles, but everything that I've heard of yours, is written really well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's very catchy. It's very like feels from the heart. Like it doesn't feel like it was thrown together to make a mainstream hit.
Yeah, well, I appreciate
like
that.
It was written with a purpose.
Yeah.
You know,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And
I will say this: a lot of times when people think about, like we use that word, catchy. You know, a lot of people and that's pop culture, right? Popular music, whatever, pop music. And it's like, oh, there's this catchy chorus, catchy chorus, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I will
a lot of
say
times
that
it's catchy in a mathematical sense rather than like
there's so many different elements of what catchy means.
Yeah.
But that wasn't necessarily something I was going for. But I will say that when I have a chorus, when I have a prose that I know I'm going to be repeating throughout the song, right? The main phrase, for me, when I'm writing that, I want it to flow because it's the main idea that I keep kind of coming back to. So just naturally, I make it want to flow a little bit, you know? And I love that because it just kind of, there's this rhythm behind it. And that's the whole point of the entire project of Riviers Unchosen, is to just match up these words that are coming from the deepest places or coolest stories, whatever, and then just match them up with music that just propels them into perpetual motion somewhere beyond where they could have been separately, the music and the words.
Yeah.
You know?
Are you a poetry guy too?
I started in poetry.
I was going to ask about like your relationship with writing.
I took poetry in college.
Okay.
And I excelled in the class. I didn't know, I wasn't good at poetry in the beginning because I had so many ideas and emotions and everything was just getting laid out on paper.
Poetry is, you might be about to say something similar to what I'm thinking here.
Let's see.
But to me, poetry is one of those mediums where it's very important to have an understanding of the rules in order to know how to break them.
Correct.
Properly in a way that it's meaningful.
I broke all the rules out of order.
Right.
Yeah. And yes. So being an emotional, you know, like I said, I'm more emotion than I am a physical body, you know. Poetry was something that I knew would be super helpful.
And so you took that in college.
I did. Yeah.
Did you already have a fascination with writing in general before music or at the same time? Or when did they like come together?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it was weird because I didn't dive into my creative elements of music until I found that guitar when I was like 15 or 16. I really didn't know what I was doing. It was all very natural at the time. At the time that I found the guitar, I started trying to come up with some cool stuff, whatever. And then at that point I realized I was into music, you know. My parents owned, my main source of actual music in the house was just that my parents had owned some really solid, iconic albums on vinyl.
Cool.
And I'm a huge vinyl collector now because of what growing up, flipping the records on and just being able to really enjoy that analog nature of music and, you know, enjoying it where, you know, after a couple songs, you got to flip this thing over. So you have to be present with the music when you're listening to a record. And so because of that, I ended up purchasing and started my whole collection of all my my favorite 90s bands. And then it just kept exploding. But it's like, but yeah, that was sort of, I was hearing stuff, enjoying it. But the creative element of it was really, really drawn out over a long amount of time. Poetry, when I took poetry in college is when I started realizing, I might be onto something where I can use these words and these verses to put music behind that I create. So that was something that didn't come around that early on.
Okay.
Until it just naturally happened because of the way that life fell, you know? So.
And
doesn't sound that exciting, but it's sort of that's just the way it happened.
No, but
you know,
that's how it goes a lot of the time.
So a lot of the first songs that I wrote that were terrible, that were recorded, were poems that I had figured out how to correctly write poems. You know, I ended up acing the class, whenever. But like, I would use those poems, create songs out of them, and those were like the early years of my sort of creativity. Put in musical terms, you know.
I have a unique, well, maybe it's not unique, but I have a weird relationship with poetry in the sense that I enjoy it, and I
And hate it?
No, no. I enjoy poetry, but I had a period of time in high school where I took an English class that was basically all about poetry. And I had never, ever really considered writing poetry before then. Like maybe I kind of messed around with a few things in my phone notes, but like nothing like where I was like doing it for a hobby or for fun or anything.
Sure, yep.
I just, whatever. And then that class came around and the teacher was just like really excellent at like teaching about poetry and fundamentals and sure. Like how, and again, like how to understand the rules and know how to break them for effect.
Definitely.
And stuff,
yep.
Which is also a thing that that concept is also something I rant about when it comes to like filmmaking too, or video making, or even, I'm sure.
Which, by the way, huge part of your life. Photography, videos,
and now it is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would say that started at high school too, because digital video production was a class that I took.
Excellent.
And I was already into.
I was going to ask you about
video.
where the origins of that came from, but
I was already into video because I grew up with internet media as like my main source of entertainment.
Okay.
And it was just what I was most attracted to because it felt more, it still had the elements of production, but it was way more intimate compared to like network TV. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that a good way to explain it?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're connecting with the person or people behind it.
Absolutely.
Rather than just like a talking head. And so I got interested in the technology, and then I got interested in the techniques and methods and all those things. And then what was I talking about with poetry? Oh, with poetry, I every once in a while I find myself like wishing I still had the drive and creative like juice in me to write the way that I did when I took that class. Because something about the structure of that class and that particular teacher, like really made like maybe because of deadlines, maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But it really forced me to write stuff that even to this day, I look back on, I'm like, I'm really happy I wrote that. And I still enjoy that I wrote. I still enjoy it.
Yep.
And I can never access that again now. And I don't really know why. Maybe it was just the right combination of time. And
there's seasons that we go through, and
yeah,
absolutely.
I definitely know that feeling.
Yeah,
sure. Any creative is familiar with that feeling of just like wanting to tap into, somewhere that you are very proud of your output at that time, but you just can't tap into now because your brain and who you are as a person is just a completely different spot.
Right. And nothing to be upset about either, right? Like that's just there's a nostalgic element of that where you can just really, you can go back in your memory, and live in those moments, and be like, wow, like I'm just really proud of myself for what I did at that time period. And, was able to output and
part of
doesn't mean it won't come back.
Part of that kind of taught me the value of, this might sound rigid, but part of it kind of taught me the value of deadlines, and that like, it's really nice to have breathing room and freedom to create at your own pace. But sometimes when you do it that way, nothing actually gets done.
Yeah. Yep.
You're just kind of in this endless cycle of like working on stuff and never finishing it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
At least that's how it works for me.
Yep.
And then looking back on video production class and that poetry class and various other things like that, a lot of the things I made would not have gotten made if there weren't like a forced like deadline that I had to
absolutely
that made me make progress.
Well, that kind of comes almost back to what you guys were talking about earlier with the open mic nights as musicians. Like you got to be prepared, and you have to be put into a situation where I'm going to present these works of art that I've created, and for other people to hear, and to listen to, So that's just, I think it's just all wraps into those that sort of live off these creative vibes, and knowing that their only response of happiness of living life is actually to be able to create, and what different ways can we create? How can we put them together? How can we enhance our creativity by collaborations with other people, or using those as stepping stones for your own personal, creative juices? It's obviously who we are,
Yeah. And going back to the writing, would you say that a lot of the stuff you write for music is like it just comes to you, or do you have a process that you put yourself in order to make something?
So I wish it was the latter. I am just a victim of my brain. Yeah. And so if something, like I said, that. Okay. Like I said, with Devil's Tree, right? Yeah. Like I was literally driving and so much came at once that I had to pull off to the side of the road because there's no way I was going to make my 40-minute drive and remember.
Right.
And the whole song was written in a matter of minutes. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And for me, it was just like, that's how it works. And so I had to pull off so I didn't kill anybody,
Hey, that could have been a song too.
Right. There you go.
Make a song out of that
too. Yeah. Yeah. And then write it. So it comes when it wants. And that's pretty much what happened with me. It was just like, and because I had been closed up for the longest period of time that I'd ever been closed up creatively, so many songs came out at once, but I can't put myself in a state. I can't sit down on a night that I'm not feeling creative and be like, okay, so what's going to come of this? The only thing I can do on the nights where my brain isn't victimizing me with songs and lyrics and ideas is to maybe enhance something that had already been written and work on the collaboration of music to words, right? Like, all right, yeah. So I kind of have the bass line, like how this song is going to feel, but I need to represent that the best way possible with this guitar. And what key is it going to be in? Where am I going to have my capo on the strings? Like, do I want the song to almost have a happier type of feel to it? I'm going to, move the capo up and get like sort of like a higher pitched sound to represent the lyrics, and that's where the whole song is going to sort of live, and in what key, and then in what sort of, time signature, or what sort of vibe is the strumming going to take, in order to represent that. And those are the nights that I will use to do that, those elements of creative writing and collaboration with myself, but not the songwriting comes when it comes with the lyrics, and then putting the music to it comes later.
Does that still come in bursts for you, or
yes.
Does it? Yep. Are you able to kind of like
hone it in?
Like not necessarily like hone it in, but like revisit that. How do I want to word this question? I guess for lack of a better term, hone it in, but that's not really what I'm thinking. I
just like the word hone.
Hone.
It's a good one.
There's not many words that include the word hone.
Yeah.
So there's hone on its own, There's the cajon, which is a musical instrument.
That's the only one I could think of.
Only one you can think of, right? Yeah.
Now I'm trying to think of
another one.
Derailed my brain.
Yes. Same. I had a question I wanted to ask, and that completely like erased it.
Well, try to remember, because I know you have a little bit limited time, so I wanted to.
Yeah, I actually might have to leave before y'all finish up.
Well, I wanted to cover
fucking work, right?
2 more main topics, but I wanted to check with you if you had anything else first.
Well, okay. So one thing that I wanted to ask, if it's not too much of a total pivot, which I guess now we were talking about your music, is what are your current plans with the cover band that you're in right now? Like, do you guys have any potential plans of like actually like writing originals and releasing originals, or is it all like just going to be like covers for the time being?
So I sort of stepped into a group that had pre-existed without me.
Okay.
And so, that circuit that they're playing towards and playing within is cover music.
Gotcha.
Right. And which is is actually nice. It's a breath of fresh air for me.
Yeah.
There's a huge
market for that around
I never
here.
thought I'd be in a cover band, and they had.
Does it feel like sort of like, since you're a very creative person, does it sort of feel like kind of relinquishing the need to?
Yes, and there is always a place for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a breath of fresh air because it's not like, oh, how are we representing this baby that we created?
Yeah.
It's how are we representing these artists so that everybody can raise a glass and sing along to the favorite songs and, the songs that we all lost our virginity to in the 90s, and whatever. It's like, that's the kind of thing that this group wanted to do. And they'd been looking for, from what I know, that they were looking for a singer for a while. They couldn't land the right singer for the group. And so I think I uploaded before I left New York to move down here. I think I put some information up on some site. I don't even remember the name of the site. Song Friends or some weird thing where it was like, hey, there's maybe, because I was thinking about maybe, I want to join another band or something, but I was thinking maybe, stuff that we wrote, what would you call that? Like original artists, And so somewhere in the World Wide Web, my information was floating on there on some website. And one of the wives of the guys in the band found it and reached out to me. And in fact, it only reached out to me like through that app, which I didn't have notifications on for. So I didn't see it, I think, for like a month and a half. And then, but they still hadn't found anybody. So I reached back, and then I got on the phone or whatever with this guy, John, who was the drummer. And he was just like, this was his whole pitch. Was just like, just like, come down, it's rock and roll, we're gonna have some fun with it,
Hell yeah.
And to a T, that's who this guy is. That's it.
As soon as you started talking, I was like, that's good people right there already.
Great people. And
you accidentally did a great impression of Charlie Day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That voice.
Well, John, I don't know if you got that before with your voice, but anyway, shout out to John and my crew, man, in the band Meltdown. It was just so fun. And no, there's no like huge plans except for let's just rock people's faces off. And that's what John told me in the first conversation that we had.
Yeah, that's all you need, bro.
It's like,
that's all you need.
What else really is there to do than to get together and play some fucking rock and roll, That was it, man, so, and that's what we're doing. So we're also working right now on reestablishing some connections that they used to have under a different band name. Okay. Cause when I came in, we were like, we got to come up with a new band name for what they used to be and everything. And so I think something was trailing on the lines of, with my work being a nuclear engineer, that the Meltdown would be a really cool name for the group. And
that is a good one.
No one else had it.
That's how that came along?
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That is sick. Okay.
And then playing all these amazing songs that, not just kind of doing the best we can to represent those original artists. And luckily, because I grew up just absorbing all of that, I literally can almost shape the vocals to sound like each one of those artists.
Well, and I can say that, like, and I've told Devin this before, like at the open mics, like when you were like a regular at our shows, like you do have like the perfect vocal timbre for the style, for that kind of like style of music, like
for the
for
acoustic.
That, like,
stuff, you mean?
For both, and for like
for both.
Like
Okay.
when you said you were in a like a 90s alt rock band, I was just like, that makes perfect sense.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and then he showed me
wanted-
the videos that he sent of the show that I went to, which
Yeah.
I'm bummed I couldn't make it to. But like, and I
We'll
was
have
like,
another-
no, that is exactly where I would expect. Yeah,
That's awesome.
So
it's
just as being the sound guy for those open mics, I also appreciate something that stands out to me with every single person is how well they can project their voice.
Your mic discipline is
You are
excellent.
excellence at that,
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
especially when you're like louder and you move away. Like at the perfect, everything about your mic etiquette.
Yeah,
and
you say that
your
like it's a
projecting-
general, like common knowledge, but just
100%.
open mic things, ain't nobody know how to point
it's-
this thing at their mouth and sing into it properly.
It's genuinely
Yeah.
like
So,
impressive.
breath
And,
of fresh air.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah.
this is going to be a rapid fire little mini topic just because it's interesting and may not be interesting for you. I don't know to talk about work, but I'm curious about like what you do as a nuclear engineer. Like what does that job entail for you? So, what is like your day to day? What is like the ins and outs?
Right.
Like?
It sounds insane, you know, it's like nuclear engineer. What, you know? But I'm the guy. It's everything that you thought.
So you're Homer.
I am this madman.
Everything goes.
This madman nuclear scientist. No, I'm just kidding. I'm nothing of that nature at all. But thank you for going along with that for a split second. So my main job is that these nuclear plants, we own 4 of them under the company that I work for across the country. Right. And 2 of them are in Florida, funny enough, but the other 2 are in the Midwest and North Midwest. And as engineers, what we need to do is there's a lot of parts that need to get changed out and a lot of parts that are obsolete on these in the nuclear plants. Now, the problem is back when these nuclear plants were built, nuclear was a very big and upcoming thing. There were manufacturers of nuclear parts that were creating nuclear grade elements, components, and circuits that would be able to be put into these nuclear plants. Well, since the downfall of nuclear because of the accidents and some nuclear plants shutting down, and now we're not creating new ones, and this was obviously not now, but decades ago, there was no money in creating and building nuclear grade parts. So now the issue is that the only parts that we have are commercial grade.
Okay.
Home Depot sort of parts, if you will, that need to get installed in order to keep the nuclear plants up and running.
Like
I'm sure that'll help prevent further accidents in the future.
Correct.
So it kind of like knowledge was like lost to time because nobody needed it.
Right. And there was no money in it because nobody was buying it.
Okay.
But we still need it, or else how else are we going to keep these nuclear plants running? By the way, you're getting the most output of energy with the most minuscule input of energy with nuclear.
I'm a proponent of
as long as it's done right. And that's where my job comes in, which is I'm a procurement engineer, which means that I am taking these commercial grade parts and it is my signature that allows that part to be installed into a nuclear application at the plant.
Okay.
And that is a lot of weight on the shoulders.
Yeah.
But everything that we do has a trail of documented evidence as to why we approved it, why we allowed it. And if it doesn't meet all the criteria up front, we send it for testing. It's got to be tested to all the same grades that the original items were procured at back in the day when places were creating these nuclear parts.
So what necessarily separates a nuclear grade part from just like a regular commercial grade? If this is something that...
as long as the part needs to act as the function of what it's going to be doing in the nuclear plant. So in other words, if you have a valve,
I was going to say, can you
this valve is the perfect fit for what we need at the nuclear plant. But the nuclear plant, this valve needs to get put into an application where there is high steam. And that high steam has a certain amount of pressure and force that it's going to exert on this valve.
I see.
And we don't want to change the valve out once a year. So we need to make sure that this commercial grade valve that you might use in a building somewhere for toilet or for water or whatever, it's going to work in an application where it's going to have X amount of pressure, X amount of moisture that's extremely hot, steam, and not be able to fail, say in X amount of years, 10 years. And we have to be the ones to decide if that commercial grade part is going to be able to uphold that application.
Like a lot of pressure.
And does that process require a lot of like physical testing of like you buy a component and put it through a bunch of tests to see if it fails?
Not us. So we are namely run through drawings and schematics and testing documentation and paperwork. So a lot of that stuff would be from the manufacturer's end. Say, hey, we want to buy this part, but we need it to be tested for this.
Okay.
They will either use their plan to do that and then give us all that documented evidence so that we can review it, make sure that it meets all of the criteria and the specifications that it needs, or we'll put it through our program, our nuclear program, where we will send it out, not me personally, but we'll have a team of people that would do that.
Yeah.
And then at that point, then it gets presented to us and say, okay, now is this ready?
So that physical testing is being done by somebody.
Correct.
In the chain somewhere.
Yep. Either externally
or
by our company.
That's cool.
That has a team that does that. So that's a very down to earth kind of explanation of exactly what we do. But the hard part is, and the crazy part of it is, every single situation, every single part that you get, people might not have seen for 20 years because it was installed in the plant for 20 years. All of a sudden, we need to replace it. So people that we've had working historically in their department for 20 years or sometimes more have still never seen this part before and have never replaced a part that does exactly what it needs to do. So you really need to be an engineering brain.
I got you.
To take it and say, all right, I'm going to...
You're problem solving.
Yeah.
Kind of reverse engineering.
And you might not have, and I'm brand new, right? Year and a half in the company. 20 years, and you still can come across things that you have no idea. And it's scary.
It's scary. Honestly.
Real. Wow. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Have you ever been in a situation where you had to come across where you had to replace a part or some kind of or find a component and it just was not available, nuclear, commercial, or otherwise?
Yes.
And what do you do in those situations?
There's a team of engineers called reverse engineering. And what they do is they take the part from the plant, they break it apart into whatever the elements are. And if it's not available anywhere, they will talk to a company or companies that can recreate the part from scratch, from the elements that they will make their own drawings of everything that they pulled apart. They'll do all the mathematical calculations on what it's doing, how much pressure it can uphold, what the measurements are, everything. And they will have companies and manufacturers that will create it from scratch. We will bring in the product as a prototype.
Okay.
We will then run it through all of the testing that it needs to go through in order for us to know, yes or no, is it going to work at the plant? Yes. Okay. How many do we need? We need 50 of these. Go back to the manufacturer and say, how much would you sell 50 of these for? And that's half answers the question. I was going to say, when they do that, is it a one of one scenario where they just make the one thing? Obviously prototype. In order for a prototype to be put through.
But the final product, is it a one of one creation and then you never see it again? Or do they hold on to all that data in order to make it again in the future if you need it again? Yeah. Well, everything gets scanned. Okay. Oh, and even if their intent is to never have to use it again, which I don't think that you would always intend to maybe need something somewhere eventually. Part of the nuclear culture is to make sure that everything has a documented trail. Yeah. Back to before this thing was even built.
Rightfully so.
So good. Yeah.
So yes, everything is saved, regardless of whether or not they might think they'll need it again. There will always be some inspection, that will come around where they're going to want to see where stuff came from and see the documented evidence and the whole trail and everything. So it'll all be there.
That's cool.
Yeah. Great questions though about it, and I'm glad that I was able to actually answer them half-assed because as much as I know is pretty much just what my specific job does, but being a part of the nuclear culture, you do talk a lot and socialize with the other people in the other groups. And so I was able to kind of see enough to give you the information that you were asking.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very fascinating because, again, having grown up in Florida, on the Treasure Coast my whole life, I've always heard about the nuclear power plant, stuff like that, and I know a little bit about the culture, but it's always been just one of those careers on a hill that like I'm just like
it really
so
is
beyond my wheelhouse of comprehension, but I can't help but just appreciate that there are like a dozen people that on the day to day are just paid to make sure that this building that is providing all of us energy to function does not explode and destroy half the state. And like that's some of the realest shit.
Yeah.
And the fact that one of them or even multiple of them is an active and talented musician is like even cooler. You know, it's like
that is an interesting element. I
think I have one final question on this topic, and it's, are you within like that nuclear science culture that you're part of, or do you find other people that are like you, that are like creative and talented in other things? Is there, can you describe the type of people that you're working with?
I can. They are opposite of me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine. Like you seem to be a bit of a
let me tell you something.
creative engineer.
When you were talking about how that type of career is just so far like career on a hill, right? Like these people over here, even as an engineer of 20 something years prior to nuclear, that was me coming into nuclear. It is a completely different style of engineering. It's like you almost live in it. Whereas the previous type of engineering roles, you go to it.
Sure. Okay.
This is something where you really have to utilize every part of your being to understand what is being asked of you, and then having to do the research to create a foundation for what you're going to present in the acceptance of these parts, right? So even for me, I felt like in the beginning, especially, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wasn't looking for that job. Someone told me, I want you, and
it found you.
I'm going to make you work here. Yeah. It was almost like I felt like I was joining the mafia. I mean, the first phone call I got from my boss was like, yeah, you looking for work down here? I was like, yeah, I mean, I couldn't find anything. I was a week away from moving and I had no work planned, nothing.
Damn.
And it was scary because I have a family, to support. Luckily, we had sold our house up in New York at the height of the market. Right. So there was a little bit of a buffer, nothing that we need to really dive into, but my youngest son ended up with ALL, acute leukemia. And so he ended up, we had to go through the whole cancer thing for 4.5 years, which was totally turning life upside down. And so when I got the call from the boss I would have down here, he was like, what do you got going on or whatever? So I explained to him, we have a trip, the Make-A-Wish trip out to Europe, for a couple of weeks for him. And cause he had completed treatment, he's doing great, whatever. So let's do our trip and whatever. He's like, take care of your family. Don't worry about work. Don't worry about money. Come down, take care of family, go on your trip. When you come back from your trip, give me a call. I'm going to take you and your wife out to dinner. And then we're going to talk about what you're going to do down here. Does that not sound like a mafia story?
Damn.
Like,
yeah, wow.
It was just like, this guy was the Godfather. And he was like, I don't want you to worry about anything. I've got it covered. And you're going to come and you're going to be working for me. And I mean,
yeah, bro. That is
nice.
Real.
It was super crazy. And I was like, babe, can you believe this story? Like, anyway, it was like a week before he moved. So like, wow, what a relief now moving, knowing somebody's going to take care of me and my family, after the Make-A-Wish trip, so it was cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's how I ended up getting a job.
That is a sick way to land that type of job too.
Yeah,
for real.
Of all things.
But then still feel completely unqualified,
Right.
considering I didn't go to school for nuclear.
Yes.
And he's like, we'll train you up.
So very last thing here.
Awesome.
We're going to wrap this up. Very last thing we ask every guest. Do you have any stories or personal experiences of interacting or experiencing or witnessing paranormal activity, or that could be, or extraterrestrial, like
Ghosts, cryptids, and aliens.
Yeah, or visions? I like to include that one too.
Fair,
because
that's valid.
That's like kind of psychological.
I just realized now, before I answer that, that I think from the halfway point of this podcast all the way up until now, you had asked about the meaning of Riviers Unchosen. And even though I didn't have a sentence that answered that question, we went into this whole thing about creativity and all of that, which got us to the point for this final question. But meanwhile, all of that is sort of wrapped into the answer of that question.
Okay.
Nice.
Which is that I never want to put myself in a comfortable position when I'm creating.
Mm.
And I didn't know at the time, when I first thought of the name Riviers Unchosen, it felt like a cheesy name or whatever. And I didn't really understand. I'm like, it sounds cool, but I had like a love-hate relationship with it. And I just kept coming back to it month after month after month as I was writing these songs. And I said to myself, you know what? That name has a lot more meaning than I gave it credit. And it was this idea that I don't ever want to take the same path twice. I want to question everything, because as an engineering mind, I have, and even from as being a kid, I've always questioned everything that was either presented to me or stated to me, because, I'm not a sheep,
Right.
Yeah.
So question everything, never put yourself in a comfortable position. That's how you keep moving forward. And I think that's what sort of encompassed myself in that name of Riviers Unchosen, which is just like, rivers constantly change over time. They never take the same path. They're always carving out new paths. Mm-hmm. And then the old parts get dried up. The new parts are running, and choosing to go where you wouldn't normally go. And so doing what would be unchosen, and taking that river. So but everything we spoke about did answer that question, but I just want to kind of wrap it up into a statement.
Fair enough.
Because I also was kind of really excited about how much that name actually meant after choosing it, before knowing it. Mm-hmm. I've always had the understanding in my brain that the universe is ever expanding and never ending. And even if there are ends to it in some 4-dimensional way, it's continuing to expand. Mm-hmm. And we have proof of this expansion that's consistently happening, sort of like a river. It's just always changing course and expanding. And so it was always a belief to me, 100%, that there was other life outside of our own, and other, I'm not even going to say planets, but the circular sort of orb of matter is something that is normal. Mm-hmm. In our galaxy and mm-hmm. in our system, and for good reason, because it makes sense, but other planets where there is,
don't tell the flat earthers that.
Don't get me started with conspiracy theories. Not me. I spent zero time with conversations of that nature where after decades or sometimes 100 years go by, and if you look at the statistics of conspiracy theories, how it's in the 90-something% that were not true. And
I'm very, very glad that the people in control of keeping our nuclear plants from exploding on the day-to-day are not bogging down their brains with that. But yeah,
just saying,
yeah,
and obviously there's some elements of those theories that came from somewhere, but I'm talking about conspiracy theories as a whole.
No, I hear you.
I do not waste energy on stuff of that nature where it's been proven that it's just fun stuff to talk about, but not anything of actual value for the most part.
Yeah.
There are great examples where it's come through, but
I have a feeling this is leading towards something to do with aliens.
Correct. Yeah. Well, yeah, it was always just an understanding of mine that to close off the idea of extraterrestrial life, albeit simpler creatures than us, or way, 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 way more further advanced, that to say that was not possible is I would feel like would only limit my brain where it didn't need to be. And so always felt that way. Do not necessarily know if we've actually ever been visited, at least to the closeness that that we hear about. For instance, like in the articles, and the crop circles were all hoaxed. We found that out. I was really bummed about that, by the way, because the idea of them being as far away as I thought, as I believe they would probably be, and using the globe as like in the art, like art paint. Yeah. I was like,
truth be told, though, the methodologies behind how they make those crop circles is kind of more impressive and kind of 100% than being made by
exactly.
Like that shit's fucking
insane rad. Art forms, by the way. Yeah, look into them if you haven't yet, with the origins of these crop circles, and overnight, by the way.
Yeah,
like what and how. The geometry, I mean, we can, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, for real.
So do I know?
That's a good idea for,
have you ever had,
do I specifically feel like that that we've been visited? I can't say, because I think that my desire to want that to be true might exceed the reality of it. And I always stay connected to reality as far as I go.
Yeah.
As an engineer, I still need to see the data, the understanding, and to kind of grasp the reality of everything.
Yeah.
So my fascination still exists that there is life out there. But that's about it. As far as ghosts and paranormal,
yeah,
I don't.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I don't. Respectfully.
Yeah, no, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's no offense taken or anything, because I have a
that's why I felt very
similar
comfortable going no.
I have a very similar like kind of mindset to yours, where at least in regards to like aliens, where like I'm not convinced that we've been visited, but I am open to it, and I hope that aliens exist, and I'm leaning towards they do.
Yeah.
I'm and even with the early vision for the podcast of paranormal exploration and stuff, our angle,
Ghost on the Aux.
Yeah, my angle that I wanted to approach it with was of skepticism, of open-minded skepticism.
Yeah,
where
great way to take on anything.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think so.
Absolutely.
Where I'm not shutting out ideas entirely.
Yep.
But I'm also not going to adopt them wholeheartedly.
Yeah, at least make sure that the ideas that you're taking in are to some degree congruent with how you already understand things, or if they aren't, that it's not asking you to completely negate a lot of what you already know or understand about the world before making sense of it, because then you just keep doing that and eventually nothing is going to make sense.
Absolutely.
And at that point you either fall into that, at that point you either become enlightened or schizophrenic.
That's so true.
There's a hard bifurcation that happens there. But, and on that note, I have to leave like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. But tell them that's my fault that you're late.
I will.
Okay.
You heard it here. Matt, it's not my fault.
Thank you guys for watching, listening. Do you have any final words?
Thank you for having me on here. I had no idea why you asked me to come on. I just felt like this is so cool, and because you're really grateful.
You're a target demographic for guests, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Eric and / Riviers Unchosen / also Meltdown. Well, the whole band /
Meltdown Preventer
/ Meltdown
Meltdown
professional Meltdown Preventer. You could follow do you want to put out your social media?
Yeah. So Meltdown is on Instagram, Meltdown the Music. Facebook is Meltdown Band. Easy to find. And my solo project is Riviers Unchosen, and that's on Facebook, facebook.com/Riviers Unchosen. And Instagram is the same thing, Riviers Unchosen. And my first single, Devil's Tree, is out this morning on YouTube, and the link to it is on the Facebook bio and on the Instagram bio.
I think I sent it to you on Instagram.
So it's out there now, and definitely take a listen, and especially if you're from the area and you know about Devil's Tree.
Yeah,
it's such an exciting thing to to finally release it. I was working endlessly on the mix because that is not something that I am a master at. But I finally figured out some things that I needed to, and I got to a place where I was happy to finally release the demo. But there's been talking for a while, but it's finally up. I feel great, and good timing with the podcast.
Yeah,
so we'll talk about it. So
right?
Thank you for allowing me to throw that on there as a spot. You know,
yeah,
I did it for me, but if you like it, good. You know, so
all right.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah,
follow us at Ghost in the Aux at pretty much everywhere. If you want to give us money, patreon.com/ghostontheaux. Peace.
Trevor and Dever, the cool peoplest ever.
Debatable.
Shucks.
I said coolest peopleist, which is awesome.
You do be some pretty peoply people.
Yeah.
Arguably the peoplest.
Arguably the most peopleest people.
The peoplest persons to ever.